Good evening. I'd like to welcome all to the December 3rd, 2019 meeting of the Norfolk Board of Health. We are going to begin at 7 o'clock with a variance hearing for septic system upgrade at 12 Lakeshore Drive. A continuation of a hearing that began on October 22nd. And I presume the same presenter is going to be with us again.
Correct.
Mr. Truex?
I forgot to just use plans, sorry about that.
Wait and see if she got it.
Yeah, I know, I don't know what's around.
For the record, Rob Truax is the only man. I had a board, I was gonna put it on, I said, no, Betsy puts it up.
I know, I'm sorry.
So, just to recap, since our last meeting, we submitted a revised plan, pertaining to variance request for, this is 12 Lakeshore Drive, that we're probably familiar with now. And what we did was, I think I have copies of it all. So we rearranged the leaching field, and I pulled it up close to the existing garage. And in doing so, we were able to obtain a 100-foot setback from the neighbor's well across the street, which didn't have an issue from the existing septic system. However, we still need a variance for the existing well to the neighbor's setback, which was currently about the same distance from their well to our existing cesspool. So I'm looking to put the leaching field up in front of the garage. We're filling the waiver for setback to a private well. The private well to the neighbor on the left, the distance would be 70 feet to the leaching field. But if you look at the distance to the existing cesspool, it's approximately 69, 70 feet now as it exists today. The other waivers that we'll be looking for doing this would be the distance from a property line. The people to the right, we would need a distance of 5 feet. And that's the second waiver. The next waiver would be a setback to a slab foundation. So the garage is on a slab, it's an old slab, and the system would be, the leaching field would be 5 feet from the garage. Knowing that the garage, obviously the system's below the slab, so it's not gonna leach into a foundation or anything like that, like I would for a house. And then we don't need, as Wade specifies in his letter, we don't need the one prior to pumping, but Wade had pointed out so kindly that we do need a waiver for the setback from the foundation to the proposed pump that's gonna pump up to the septic tank next to the house. So we're installing, just to give you a little recap, the house sits down about 25 feet from where the septic system is. We're gonna put a pump in where the cesspool is now, and we're gonna pump that up to the tank. Just because, for several reasons. One, we couldn't fit a tank down next to the house in that area, and then getting it down there would be a task in itself. We'd have to get a crane or something on the site to lower it down there. So we're gonna put a pump up to the tank, put the tank up next to the leaching field, and then leach, obviously, to the leaching field there. So that would be a force main. A little force main would go out around the house, come through the patio, and go up to, there's some landscape timber wall on the opposite side, and go up that hill. That hill is the least, it's probably the easiest way. The guy told me when I spoke to one of the installers, he thinks he can walk a mini down that hill, put that force main in and get around through the pump.
Okay.
So with that, I think it's a better plan than the last time we were here. I think it was a good idea to ask for different waivers and rearrange this thing and squeeze it up tight to the house, up to the garage and to the property line. We are not impacting anyone any further than what currently exists. The cesspool now is probably leaching into the groundwater, and it's just as close to the neighboring well. This system will be elevated some 25 feet, probably have about 15, 20 feet of separation to that groundwater, so we'll get good treatment, so that well's gonna have better protection than it currently does today. So, with that.
Would you like to add to anything you already sent us, Wayne?
Other than it's the revision, worked out really well with the neighboring wells. One's, the one across the street's still in compliance. The one to 14 Lake Shore Drive there's no change to it at all. It's still 70 feet. And the applicant now has a better system. They're now, 90 feet, 95 feet from it, where before they were like 26. So water quality, it's an excellent change. But the plans before you, though, as I wrote in the report, was that the E1 has just been neglected on the design aspect and just has to be brought up to date. Like, just for instance, there's not even a sewer line showing from the house to the E1 proposal chamber. I think having E1 down below is a good idea. It's within the 100-year floodplain, and if it's going to flood, which it will, only 70 gallons of sewage will be exposed to the pond, and not 1,500 gallons as a septic tank would have. So that's a good thing. So I'm looking for specifications on the pump itself, and having the top of it sealed, elevations of the chamber, just more specifics to it, which Rob can come in with a revision on it. Looking at the pressurized pipe going up to the tank, I would recommend having that sleeve just in case it gets damaged or something comes apart, because it's close to the wells. Again, the focus is protecting the wells. And that's it. I recommend approval. Oh, also, I did add on a couple more variances too, just to deal with the E1 chamber, pump chamber. So, looking at the bottom of my report, I do have a list of variances or recommendations that you guys can follow, and that's also including the 2 extra variances that's on page 2.
Can I just ask a question? about this
Absolutely.
pump? So, that pump has to be working. What happens, how do you know if it's not working?
There's a couple of ways. One, there's an alarm that goes off on it. Yep, and if the alarm, yes, and if the alarm doesn't go off, then it backs up to the house. That's the worst way of knowing it.
Okay.
But the system does have a flotation alarm, so when it's getting up high, the alarm kicks off and lets people know that there's something wrong with the system.
So, the alarm is connected electrically? to s-
Yes, the pump and the alarm are both connected electrically, but they're on separate circuits. So if the pump shorts out, something happens to the pump, the alarm has electricity supplied to it, so it can work. If the alarm electricity somehow gets damaged somehow, then unfortunately you'll find it backing into the house, and then you get it corrected that way. That's something we don't want.
Because if it was flooded, then the electrical receptacle would be, I mean, if you said,
Oh, you mean if the area floods?
yes,
The area floods, they're gonna know it, the basement will be full of water. They probably won't be, if it's, the top of the tank itself is watertight, then it probably won't be affected at all by it. But typically, if that area there is flooded, they should be aware of not to flush their toilets and use their sink.
Is there any need to check the existing well on the Warnick's property at this point? Certainly, we're improving what's happening with the septic from what it currently is, but is there any need to check their water now and then check it later? To make sure that nothing bad has happened? Do we do that at all? Recommend that?
You could recommend it. Who would be paying for it?
I would expect the homeowner who's applying for the variances.
Okay. You could probably add that in on the variance. So how would you like, what would the
No, I'm
frequent-
just curious as to whether that's something that's done or not done, or,
I think it's up to the board's decision if they want, you'd have to have the neighbor next door, the one next also to want that. done,
Right,
if
right.
It's privately,
Right.
but having it being offered for their wells to be tested. The only thing is it's the same distance, but groundwater is running at a different distance, because as we talked about last time, Potalatic Pond, the water flow's going towards it, and now with the leaching area being up gradient to it, would it affect that well or not?
just throwing that out there.
what would you test for? I mean, what are you thinking?
Coliform bacteria?
Probably nitrogen would be one, just maybe your
And
standard.
coliforms.
Just your standard well
your
test,
s-
I would think.
Yeah, private wells have a standard water test, they have like 15 parameters.
Yeah, this would be an extended suite of chemicals. We're talking mostly about the concerns over septic. Intrusion.
Correct. The best way of doing it, you'd get a control right now, and then you'd probably want to test it when the house is being occupied.
I don't think it needs to be an ongoing, forever.
Right, no, I was thinking like now and then sometime later, 6 months or 12 months or something, just kind of.
Well, the house would have to be occupied. I don't think it's occupied
Oh,
now.
okay.
12.
Yeah, it's gonna be, they have people who wanna,
Oh, they have people
they
want
have
to buy it?
interested people, correct, who have interest in the house right now.
In 6 months after occupancy would probably be the best.
Well, I think the idea of offering it as an option to the neighbors makes tons of sense. If they want to take us up on that.
I do have an idea. We can ask the applicant to put money in escrow, take at least 2 tests, and then if the neighbors wants it, the money's there available for them to test it. If they don't want it, and then the escrow can be submitted back to the original applicant.
How much is a test? Just standard test?
Standard, we're probably talking about $35 to $60.
Short change.
It is pretty short change, yeah.
A nice gesture.
Yeah, you'd have to do it like you said, now, get a basis to see where it's at, and then test it again, after someone lives there.
Right.
Either 6 months or even a year, maybe. I would say a year, more so than 6 months. It takes about 6 months to get the thing really activated and get the biomass built up.
Did you have a question or comment, sir?
I did
ma'am?
have a question. I'm Eileen Mason. I'm from Remax Executive Realty. I represent the seller on the sale of the property. You're testing the neighbors well. How do you know that their septic isn't affecting that well as well? Do they have a septic system, or are they on a cesspool still? 'Cause
Well, we're doing a pre-test, which would be today, or before anything happens
No,
out
I'm
here.
talking about the neighbor itself. How do you know their cesspool isn't affecting their well water quality?
It might be.
Well, yeah, we don't know that. What
Don't
we're
know
asking,
that.
the test is really all about, is there anything, as the result of this work being done, that affects the quality? But the first sample will be whatever the world influences are surrounding that well,
Yeah.
including the neighbor's system,
Okay.
anybody else's system. It could even be including this system,
Yeah.
the one that's there now.
Mm-hmm.
They would do a test now,
Yeah.
that would be your basis and your standard. So if it's already affected, then it's affected, then the system can do it right now. So you want a basis so that when you go back in a year, now if the nitrogen levels have skyrocketed for some reason, that's what they're looking for.
Hmm.
Does everybody have to test their well water on a certain regular basis in Norfolk, or no?
No.
No,
No, okay.
it's during installation.
Yeah, at a
Yeah.
transfer of property, they do.
That transfer, yeah,
But an ownership, it's at their own.
okay. Well, thank you.
Got a question?
Yes, ma'am?
Hi, I'm Karen Shapiro, 9 Lakeshore Drive. So I haven't had an opportunity to look at the latest plan, so I just want to confirm that
Oh,
that we're no
please.
longer impacted.
You come on up and take a look.
We were thinking of you at the last meeting, and that's what this
I was
plan
gonna
reflects.
say my husband was here, but,
Yeah. Okay,
That would be the location of your well,
right.
and this is.
May I approach and look also? I mean, David
Absolutely,
Comfort, I'm
please.
actually interested in the property.
Oh. So you want to see if your potential neighbor could be a pain in the butt?
You better listen intently, actually. You might scare me away. No, you don't look-
I'm nice.
You don't look scary.
You.
I'm small,
Yeah.
yes, but I don't know if it's the thing is.
2 fields,
Out down here.
Yeah.
This is the driveway, they put it in the garage.
what's nice about it, you can actually walk it with a tape and measure it.
Systems go along the driveway. They're gonna cut the driveway out.
Okay, was the original one like?
Yes, I'm waiting.
No, it's down here.
No, I mean the original plan. 'cause
No,
it's
no,
always
here.
goes that way.
It was giving, it was 100 feet from, it was split between the two wells, so it was 80 and 80. Correct.
In that range.
But it was putting the Shapiro's well in non-compliance, so we asked them to move it.
In non-compliance.
So is the existing, that's failed?
Successful?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
I wasn't involved in that.
You guys have a record that it failed?
Yeah, there's a Title V report.
Yeah.
That's failed?
Yep. It's not that it's not working, it's just not allowed anymore, so
It's
they
probably
have to
sitting
fail
in
it to do a
groundwater,
new
too.
system.
If it's sitting in groundwater, it's automatic failure.
It's in the floodplain.
I couldn't see that system.
So you know the house is in the floodplain.
Yeah, there's a corner on it.
To your question earlier about the pump, so if the flood water comes up over the pump chamber, it's in the house. The house is flooded also.
Okay.
So if you look at the floodplain, the patio in the front of the house is above flood elevation. So the back of the house would have 5 feet of water in it.
And there's also a back door,
On this plan?
which goes into the basement.
It is, it's this dark line right here. It goes into the house and then pops back out of the house.
Okay, so I was looking at a FEMA plan, it was completely different.
This is an actual elevation survey, so the FEMA plans are approximate, but that's the real elevation on the plan.
Okay.
So I don't know, I mean, the basement level is obviously the bottom level of that house, right in floodplain. So a mortgage company would require flood insurance.
Now, just food for thought, if the previous owner has flood insurance, you can also purchase that too, from them. It transfers of real estate.
And sometimes it's really cheap. It can be like $100 a year.
Yeah, but if they purchased that house and it was at a flood zone C, and the FEMA years ago changed it, like 20 years ago, they might change it, give it like a reduction on the insurance. If you become a
So
previous.
for the insurance, because this has an elevation survey done, we can do a form, we'll give the actual elevation to each floor in the house, and then they get insurance based on that.
Okay.
The
But
max
isn't
is-
FEMA insurance, though, isn't that controlled through, isn't it FISP, is that what it, that's the flood insurance, something program, I thought it was all, the fees are the same regardless of the insurance company, so it's not like a negotiable thing.
I think you're correct. I think it's because we own a house on the water in Mattapoisett.
Right, so the
we
federal
have to get it.
government's basically insuring you, not State Farm, Allstate.
Right, that's correct. But it covers only up to a specific amount. It's like $250,000 is the top amount that they insure. We had to have a flood certificate, a FEMA certificate. They had to measure to the tallest horizontal member, I mean, the whole thing. And it was, some of them are
You're still required
assumable.
to have it, you're still-
We worked it out that we didn't have to have a mortgage, so we didn't have to borrow something from the bank, so I didn't require the flood insurance, because sometimes it's exorbitantly expensive.
Correct.
Sometimes it's assumable.
That's correct, yeah. If it's pre-existing, if someone had that house, and they had flood insurance, well, they had the house and flood insurance was required on them, when they actually owned it, they could get a cheaper rate. And if they did, you could actually purchase that for yourself. It's transferable on real estate.
Okay. Because I saw there's a couple amendments to it, 44 Lake Shore got amended, and they don't have to have flood insurance.
Because you got amended.
Possible, based on the
But
elevation of the house.
looking at the map, the FEMA map, the house is completely engulfed in the map.
Well, it goes, well, this has, this particular.
And this one,
area has an
you
elevation.
know, the FEMA map, I basically it was the deck, but that's a better, obviously, that's a current.
It's gonna go by elevation.
Pretty
Right.
much is the deal breaker, is that because it's such a big job. You mentioned something about the crane, so,
We won't do it right now. We're gonna be.
you know, but
we're gonna do,
would you be able to legally put it down there?
You-
I'm not
you-
asking you to.
Oh, no, I would strongly
We don't
recommend not to
recommend
do
it.
it. No, you wouldn't want your tank down there.
You can't get to it to pump it.
And if it did flood, you have 1,500 gallons of sewage mixed in with that water, flood water.
Yeah, if it ever did flood.
It's pretty dirty.
Yeah.
It's
So.
not good for the environment.
So, and I'm asking a lot of questions, I appreciate
Good,
everybody's,
good.
everybody's patience, so what is that, for that tank being there, will that affect if, we want to put like a two-car garage on there? And that would actually.
Your issue with a two-car garage and that is going to be setbacks from property line, that need variance. Setbacks in Norfolk, I believe all the side yards are 25 feet.
Mhm.
This lot's only 50 feet wide.
Yes, yeah.
So you would, you're already pre-existing non-conformance, you need a variance. And then you need the waiver, probably have to update the waiver to the setback to the garage. If you wanted to make it any closer, I would assume it would be okay.
You know, also,
It'd be no more non-conforming than it is today. So that would get you by.
Yeah, so you couldn't move it towards the septic, but you could move it back towards the house and make
It is pretty close to the drop,
Yeah.
but I would just add to it.
Yeah, you
Oh,
need a variance.
You really tear it down.
Gentlemen, we can be on board of health issues here, so that's a building department
if I
problem.
could just add on to that, because that's if you're gonna add on to your existing garage to the left,
Facing the house,
well,
facing the property.
yes, facing the property, now's the time to discuss it with the owner, because you could move that tank, slide the tank over some, and move your pressurized line around your possible footprint, and you wouldn't be touching it. And that, yes, because with a pressurized pipe, you can move that tank, you have leadway moving the tank around, you just can't become 50 feet to that existing well. So you can move your tank up a little bit and then make your footprint larger on your garage. So you could have what you wanted.
My son's the one that's trying to buy the house, so I'm just doing
Yeah.
everything.
And then the tanks itself could be H20. You just have to increase the height, the strength of it so you can drive on it. Because you already have a vent. So,
So I'm assuming that the owner's not gonna put this in, or they're just gonna get the permit, right?
Getting a
You get
permit.
it approved. Okay. Right.
so you
And then
can discuss it.
the only other question I had, I believe I asked you this today when I talked to you, thanks for your help, is the timeline. Right, so is that basically the lenders? So let's say he buys the house, they negotiate, he buys the house. What is his timeline for installing this?
Well, wait, this is good for, your approval is good for how long?
3 years, 3 years, but you're gonna,
I can deal with the lender.
yeah, there's gonna be invisible hands working here, because someone wants to move in it. So the Lending Institute will want a habitable house, so they'll want a certificate of compliance from the Board of Health. But from now, we're looking for another revision on this regarding the pump system specifics. So now's the time to talk to Rob if you're gonna be changing anything around, as long as you don't create more variances, because the board tonight's gonna set variance approvals, or maybe not, no approvals. But if you can move that tank over, maintain, your distance from the foundation, you're able to make some tweaks to this.
Okay.
And you have the designer right here, and so you,
You're probably gonna need, if you're getting financing on this, you're gonna need the system in. You're gonna need to put that.
Yeah, so that's because of the complexity of the project, we have a verbal quote, it's like 40 plus. From a friend. That was a better friend than mine, I guess.
I just put it out for bid, I had a verbal quote and I had a written quote with the thirds.
And that's with the upgrade, right, doesn't have to have an upgrade for the pump, electric system upgrade for the pump?
That was with the pump.
Okay.
I had pump in it, you had pump in there.
All right, we need to come to
I
an
appreciate
agreement on
everything.
this.
Yeah, really good. Thank you.
Is there a motion, unless there's anything else to talk about, is there a motion to approve? And we probably should actually read the variances that we are granting versus the ones that we don't need to grant.
and you'll find them on the first page. I have them listed on
Oh.
I have them listed.
But before we actually take a vote on this, is there anybody else from the neighborhood who wants to add anything to the conversation?
I'd just like to know the timeline, is this getting approved with additional things to be added to it? So
No,
we
just the
can-
variances that have been requested. We're talking about,
Nothing new, yeah.
once we're done with the variances, those are the ones we're approving, and that's
We're
it.
approving and then we can move with it.
Move with the approval.
So is there another meeting we have to come back to?
No, this is it.
Is it, okay,
After this other technical review.
all right, thank you.
So can we confirm from this document exactly what we're granting?
Yes. Looking at the first page, you're dealing with 15.405, where the 2 bullets are there. 3 bullets, if you go. And then you're also looking at a local regulation, which is Section 3, specifications number 10. That's dealing with distances to the wellhead to the new leaching facility. And then you have 2 additional variances, which I'm recommending, and that's dealing with your E1 pump chamber. And that's allowing it to encroach the foundation and also encroach the side property line. Because there's just not enough room for 10 feet from the property line and 10 feet from the house. And I recommended like 6 plus or minus feet by looking at the scale. You should be able to put it in.
And then there was an additional option being offered to the neighbor for the cost of a pre-test of water quality from their well. This is the Wernick property. A pre-test, and then a year after occupancy, another test. Well water, Wernick property.
I see the good intentions of that, but what happens if the second test, it comes dirtier?
Comes dirtier?
Yeah, it's dirty. Say there's high nitrates. And then you just had the second test with high nitrates, and then the question is it that system, or it could be something else?
Or is the owner's system failing? The person that did the testing, is their system failing? I mean, it'd be good for them to know but at that point, but.
No, I get it. It was just, again, it was just a question, just because, again, I guess with the leach field moving, that was my only
Yeah,
issue.
it's-
But I
it's-
understand that, yes, if the owner's system, something goes wrong, could it have affected their own well? Yes. So you're right, there's no way of actually proving that it had anything to do with that, so.
But I think it's a good thing for peace of mind, though, and going through the escrow, the options there. I think that's,
But you're right, what's the redress that they have if it does come back higher? I don't have that answer.
Well, we won't have an answer to that.
Right.
Have we ever done that before?
Not my
We're
memory.
setting precedent?
No, this is,
I'm new here.
yeah,
no, but I think it's a great,
new ideas.
I think it's a great idea. It's really cheap insurance, peace of mind.
Except if it comes back positive.
Right.
Then we have, someone has to
All right.
start the investigation.
Well,
Paying for that.
we can vote on that one separately if you want to, or we can.
No,
vote to the- You ready to vote for that one, too?
sure.
All right. So who wants to make a motion here?
So, I'm going to read these variances,
Go ahead,
right?
Fran.
So I make a motion that we accept, the board accepts the variances listed to 310 CMR 15.405, contents of local upgrade approval. So the variances, do I have to read the whole thing? To allow 70 feet and 95 feet from the proposed soil absorption system to adjacent private water supply wells, 100 feet is required, 75 feet to number 14 Lakeshore Drive's private water supply well, and 95 feet to number 12 Lakeshore Drive's private water supply well, and also to allow the soil absorption system to be 5 feet from the property line. 10 feet distance is required. So that's one.
If I could just make a comment?
Yes.
It's 70 feet to number 14 Lakeshore Drive. I think you said 75.
75, I was
Okay.
thinking the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
So correction is 70 feet?
I'm correcting it to 70 feet to number 14, okay. And the second one is under the same statute, I guess, to allow the soil absorption system to be 5 feet from the slab foundation, 10 feet distance is required. And then under the Norfolk Board of Health, on-site sewage disposal regulation, section 3, specification number 10, the variance to allow 95 feet and 75 feet from...
70.
70 feet, thank you, from a proposed soil absorption system to adjacent private water supply wells. 100 feet is required. 2 additional variances are needed to address the location of the proposed E1 pump chamber. They are under 310 CMR 15, Section 15405, contents of local upgrade approval, to allow the E1 pump chamber to be less than 10 feet to the foundation and less than 10 feet to the side property line. 10 feet is required. A variance of plus minus 6 feet for both variances. And then,
That's it?
that's it. The additional.
And we're going to add to that, the abutters, the Warnicks at 14 Lakeshore Drive have the opportunity, the option to have their well water tested for, we'll call it the standard Board of Health parameters.
I would say standard private well parameters.
Yeah, do we have a list of what those are?
Yeah, I
This
think we
is-
do. I think we do. I remember reading it, but then again, the certified lab, it's an old reg, but the certified lab would have their own list. I would go with the certified lab's list of a standard private well testing versus that very long extended.
Well, no, I don't mind doing, also organics and stuff like that that requires expensive instrumentation. Well, this is a standard test for nitrogen, coliform bacteria presumably.
Sodium,
Yeah.
phosphates.
All right, so if we can phrase it as the standard water quality criteria that would reflect the possible impact of septic waste on water quality. With that idea in mind, we're talking about the opportunity to have it well tested now, before the construction begins, and tested again a year later after occupancy. Does that sound familiar?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Do we also need to read the additional, a suitable document? Also,
All right, so we have, Wade, you recommended documentation. Is there recording in the Registry of Deeds? The signifies no garbage grinder shall be installed. And that the dwelling can only have 2 bedrooms per Title V definition. And is that it?
just pending revision of that.
Pending revision of the items discussed in
Items.
my review regarding the pump system.
E1 pump chamber.
Right, well, that's now included. All right, so with that list, I believe it's a comprehensive list. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, Rob.
That was painful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. It is a little after 7:15, more like 7:35, and we need to continue. Is this a continuation? Yes. Another variance hearing. This one is for the new domestic well at 1 Cottage Avenue. And we have a representative from Richardson Well. Would you like to come forward with your plan?
I have good copies in your packet of it too.
All right, so 1 Cottage. Get there?
Came in
Folded up piece of paper today. Here, I'm gonna say.
Yeah. Do you want to present this, or describe it, or should we just look at it?
I mean, we're looking, the variance is just from the road, we've got the distance from the septic. I think the last time it was, we were in agreement anyways, but we didn't have the proper plan,
Right.
so we had an engineer to do a plan for that.
Do you have any comments, Wade, on the new plan or the requests?
No, I think it's great. They have the land surveyor, plotted out the land and located the proposed well 101.3 feet from their septic system. The rear of the lot's where the test holes are, so if they're ever gonna upgrade that system, they have room in the back to put the leaching facility. And, the only thing that they didn't do was show the cesspool across the street, because I know there's one located there, but in my personal research, I found that the cesspool was far enough if you stayed in that corner of the lot where the well is located.
That there'd be no impact?
Yeah, there should be no impact.
Yeah, Wade, I think I measured it was about at least 130 feet downhill.
Yeah, it's pretty far away. Okay, good, so it's so far away, it's not even on the plan.
Right.
So that looks good.
I thought we had talked about maybe putting some kind of bollards or something around the well, so that perhaps being so close to the edge of the road, that there was some concern that plows or something were gonna
Yes.
plow it off.
Could that be done?
Yeah. I think it was discussed at the last meeting, yeah.
So what would you use?
Cement blocks, I mean, I don't know what.
They make,
What
they're
do you
called
think?
bollards, and so you might find them like at the back of
I
a
know.
parking lot, something
Yeah.
like that, kind of in maybe an L shape around them, so that it covers the corner between, well, Norfolk Ave isn't actually a road, right? So just protecting maybe that Cottage Ave corner, so that it doesn't get knocked over?
I mean, it's not in our purview, but I'll make sure the owner has to do that. You know, I mean, that's not something a well driller would do, but,
Mm-hmm.
we can make sure that he needs to know that he has to do that.
Well, it's in the best interest of the homeowner to do something just to prevent, a
Yeah.
future snowplow taking it out.
In agreement, yep.
So that could be added as a condition on the permit, the well installation permit. Is that, there's protection on the wellhead.
So do we have details of the variance here?
I don't think you gave us anything. any
No, I did not,
comments.
no, because the plans came in, I think this came in today around afternoon. Just wasn't any time. So we're looking at, so you're looking at 40 feet to the front property lines on both of them, since they're both considered front property lines. So you would allow that the encroachments to the two front property lines be less than 40 feet.
I thought it had something to do with the street, too, that it was going to be closer than 40 feet to the street.
Correct, you got two streets there. It's on a corner.
So,
So you're allowing that wellhead to get closer to the street than typically a normal well installation would be.
to both streets.
To both streets, correct,
So that's what the variance is for,
correct.
to allow the well to be less than 40 feet from Norfolk Street, Norfolk Avenue and Cottage Avenue.
That is correct.
That's it.
And yes, and it's because it's maintaining the proper distance to this leaching facility, to the cesspool that's servicing that home. Yep, that's what tonight is.
What is your normal engineering ease, the expression that you use? It's 40 feet from the property line, right?
Correct, that's correct.
That's what we're not getting. We're down to less than 10 feet.
That's correct. So you're looking for a variance of, calculate it out. So you're looking for, 40 minus 9 feet is what, 31 feet variance. The other one's looking for 33 feet
Yeah,
variance.
okay. So variances of, third,
Then I would probably place it as a plus or minus.
yeah, so
31
variance,
feet plus or minus to Cottage Avenue,
yep,
and it would be 33 feet variance to Norfolk Avenue.
okay,
And due to the distance, you'd want some kind of post, multiple posts to prevent any kind of structure or vehicle of hitting that wellhead.
okay. Some kind of physical barrier,
Yeah.
posts, such as posts to protect the wellhead, given the proximity to the public way.
Something like this, Tom. Would make sense. See, here's your corner, and you would put something kind of, maybe a post here, or maybe a post here, or a post there. So that anybody just wouldn't hit it.
40 feet
Oh.
from the street.
That's what I'm thinking.
Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah, I think I at least think the same thing.
Out there, or were you thinking closer to the
No,
road?
no,
So-
something like that, so that, yeah, so if,
Okay,
yeah.
all right,
Like a-
let's,
I
let's,
like
we'll pass
bollards.
that along to the applicant. All right. So,
I make a motion?
do that.
You're good at that.
Accept a variance of 31 plus or minus feet to Cottage Avenue for the installation of a new domestic well at 1 Cottage Avenue, and 33 feet to Norfolk.
Plus or minus.
Plus or minus to Norfolk Avenue, and that the homeowner install a physical barrier to protect the wellhead.
Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're done. Thank you. Which brings us to another variance hearing. This is for 3 Cedar Road. So this is the first time we're talking about this particular one. So my preamble is, a variance hearing from Board of Health Regulations is called to order for 3 Cedar Road. It's my duty to inform the applicant that you'll have to provide the board with data to support your request for a waiver of board regulations, and that if you don't receive the waiver, it will do you manifest injustice. You've also got to show that what you intend to do is environmentally acceptable. So, please come forward.
Jim Susi with United Consultants. As you can see, we're dealing with an 8,000 square foot lot, so we don't have a whole lot of room to do much down there. And we have a wetland area along in here, so that really pushes us over more on a very small lot. Currently, pipe comes out and goes to 2 cesspools. Those will both be pumped, crushed, filled with sand. We'll install a new 1,500 gallon 2-compartment tank, a pump chamber, and then that will pump up to a bed of Elgin units, okay? Then the heavy black line you see around here is a retaining wall with the 40 mil barrier on the back side of it to prohibit the breakout in this area, and also to minimize our disturbance within that one being the 25-foot buffer zone. Janet's gonna be overjoyed with this. But anyway, we've tried to do it as best we could. We did 2 deep holes, but we were not able to perform a perk test on site. We discussed it with Wade. We took a soil sample, had that sent out to PSI over in Norwood, and the results of those test results were attached to the soil logs that we submitted with the plan.
Okay. So the variances you are requesting include setbacks? What are your variances you're?
I believe one of them would be, actually, this is a walkout. I think the only thing we were looking for was to allow the sieve analysis
Oh, in place of this,
in place of the
Perk test.
perks, And there was one other one, can you get down a little bit, that's you. Review that, what it is. Oh, yes, that's the setback to the wetlands line, thank you very much.
Mark, it's pretty cool.
25-foot setback to a wetland line with 50 is required.
26, this says 26 feet. Is it 25 or 26? I don't know.
25.7, I probably rounded.
To a bordering vegetative wetland. Okay.
Recommendations, Wade?
Oh, yeah, first, I'd just like to thank the engineers that are coming for you tonight there of making this agenda, because it was pretty rushed for a lot of people, because you guys are meeting tonight, and they had variances, and I was out in the field, working in the field. I said, well, the board's meeting December 3rd, can you get your stuff in for that meeting? And they tried to do their best. And one plan came in Tuesday before Thanksgiving. This one came in piecemeal. So the plan I reviewed was in process, and Jim was working on bringing more information in. So I do appreciate the efforts they're doing too, but what's happening tonight is that the variance is staying the same. The plans might change a little bit, alter, and technical information's coming in, but the plan's staying the same, so the project can still continue on, other than having 3 or 4 Board of Health meetings to catch all these plans coming in. So that's why you're seeing late plans, late reports. Everything seems a little bit unorganized. So I do apologize on that, but it was just to get everything in one night. So the plan I saw was a plan in progress, and there was a lot of errors in it because it was just quickly put together. But the variances they're looking for would be a sieve analysis. When we went out there, there's 2 layers of soil. The bottom layers was basically sand, but it was underneath groundwater, so we couldn't do a perk test. So did a sieve analysis. The lot's very small, and there's 2 holes, so they prepared for 1 sieve analysis, just so, there you go, just so it would be cost effective for the homeowner, because the soils are the same. So, in the back of the lot, we have 1 sieve analysis to represent that leaching facility, and that's one of the variances that they're looking for you tonight. In lieu of a percolation test, you're using a sieve analysis, which is getting a lab analysis of the soils, breaking it down to silt, clay, and sand, and from that results, they'll get a long-term acceptance rate for that system. And it's a DEP policy, they allow this to happen in case of environmental conditions or safety conditions. They allow you to have an alternative to a perk test, but it has to be approved or approved by the Board of Health. It's a variance itself. So that's one of the variances you're looking at tonight. The lot is small, 8,000 square foot lot. You got a house on it, you got a garage on it, you got vegetated wetlands on one side of it, so there's not really too much room to put in to get that leaching facility away from that wetland. So the best they could do with the unit they're using is, 26 feet, something like of that nature. And you can see by the plans that there's really no other place to go.
I think we've got a bed that's 14 by 17 overall, so.
In groundwater, because the top layer I talked about, groundwater's up pretty high, so they're using an Elgin system, which is a passive, it's an alternative leaching facility, and it actually has some cleansing involved in it, and it's passive, so you don't have to have it inspected each year. And since it's a better unit than a regular pipe and stone, the state allows it goes 2 feet to groundwater by right. So that's what they're using here to keep the system above groundwater and then keep the land pretty normal without having a hump. So they have an Elgin alternative
Okay, so
system.
the 2 feet is approved,
It's approved,
so there's no
yes.
variance required for the Elgin system.
That is correct. These IA systems are tested down on the Cape at the base. The state looks at it, approves it, and then they give like a generic approval for all these different IA systems. So they're saying, we're allowing this system to go 2 feet to groundwater, so you don't have to come to us and ask us. It's approved over it. So I'm assuming without a state approval, it kind of trickles down to the local Board of Health also. So if someone uses an Elgin, it's also accepted in the town, 2 feet to groundwater, without going through a local hearing or something. So that's, and there's quite a few of them out there.
What's the details of what's going in the ground? Questions? Time for another variance motion?
So I make a motion that we accept the variances, which include a minimum setback distance, which will allow the soil absorption system 26 feet plus or minus to a bordering vegetated wetland where 50 feet is required, and also that the percolation test to allow a sieve analysis in substitution of the percolation test and in design sizing.
Second?
Second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
You're there.
What else can you do? I mean, they have a failed cesspool and they have this tiny lot and there's no other place to put anything.
All right, where are we now?
Spring Street.
We're getting closer to almost being on schedule. For Mr. Glosser. All right.
Take a look at it if there's any. This isn't one of the ones like over. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Jimmy.
So, it is time for a fourth hearing. This one is a variance of Board of Health regulations for 2 Spring Street. And it's my duty to inform the applicant or their engineer to provide the Board of Health with data to support the request for the waiver. And that if the applicant doesn't receive the waiver, it'll do the manifest injustice. You also got to show that what you intend to do is environmentally acceptable. Mr. Glosser.
Mr. Chairman, John Glosser, Engineering, 46 East Street in East Walpole, and I'm representing Chris Romano, who's the owner of the house at number 2 Spring Street. So you're heading sort of out of town on Seekonk Street. Spring Street's the second street, right? Norwell's the first, I think. And his is the first house on the right, so it's right on the corner of Spring and Seekonk. Spring and Needham, I shouldn't say Seekonk, sorry about that. Spring and Needham. And so similar to the case that you just heard, when we went out to do the soil testing, the water table was fairly high, and I think in this location, the water table, more often than not, is fairly high based on the number of test pits that, based on the number of sump pumps that Chris has at his house and some other information that I have. I've done a couple of other systems nearby. So the first request for the waiver from Title V is for the percolation test. So we took 3 tests, 2 in the back. Is that true? We took 3 tests at test pits 1, 3, and 4. I might have to look at this. How's that sound? So we took tests here, here, and here. We didn't test number 2 because after seeing what was going on with number 1, we sort of discounted this area here. And one reason we discounted this area here is it doesn't show on this plan, but there's a catch basin here that catches all of the water that comes off. This property is actually slightly below the street. I guess at one point, at least according to Chris Romano, they sort of raised up Spring Street a little bit to take care of some grading problems or some drainage problems in Spring Street, and it kind of forced the water onto his property. So the town went back and put a catch basin in here for him. So I wouldn't call it a swale, but there's definitely, you can see how the water gets out of these 2 lots and it goes into a catch basin. So because once we looked at the soils, we knew the system would be rather large. We discounted that area. And as I said, so then we took samples from here, here, and here, and this is test pit 3, I believe. It's the one that's the worst one, I know that. So this test pit here, was silt loam, only 3.2% sand. So the other ones had over 40% sand, 77% silt, and almost 20% clay. So this came out like bricks. So this is not a good area. Back here, not so bad. Guessing if we did a perk test, maybe 30 minutes an inch, something like that. But there was just no way to do it. The water table's too high. We could do it in the B layer, but then we're not showing that we have 4 feet of naturally occurring soil. So we wanted to try to have this system comply as much as possible with DEP regulations. So what happens here, septic tank here, new septic tank, pump chamber, and then we're pumping up into a press bead bed. We're going to be 2 feet above the water table, but we're 100% the size that's required under Title V. So if you essentially take, it's a 3-bedroom house, 330, the loading rate for at 30 minutes is an inch is 0.33, so 330 divided by 0.33, you get 1,000 square foot leach bed. I think we have one that's just a little bit larger than that. So the other waiver from Title V that we're looking for is we want to have our 10-foot separation to the lot line in the back. We want to have our separation to the lot lines on the side. So it just forces us right here to be 17.6 feet from the house foundation, where 20 feet's required. So it's just this kind of a small request there. But similar to the one, and even though it is a bit of a bigger lot, it's almost 15,000 square feet. Similar to that one that you just had, there really isn't a lot of choice here. There's no wetlands here, but there just isn't a lot of choice. As I said, if we ran this down here, I know we'd end up kind of messing around with the existing sort of drainage pattern that could create not only problems for them, but problems for the neighbors. And this side was just impossible because of that test pit right there. As Wade pointed out in letter to you, a report to you, we have the water service in the front. As I said, there's the catch basin here. So to try to put it in the front, and we don't have the best soils right here. This wasn't too much different than that. That's just sort of stuck with that in the back. Doesn't work out too badly. The grade over this system is still lower than the top of his foundation elevation, which is a good thing. So we don't really have to worry so much about drainage here. We can shed the water off of here without creating a problem for the homeowner. And that's about it. So I can answer any questions that you might have. But and I think Wade's, it's similar to the previous one, and that is that we got the plan in, and with holiday, Thanksgiving Day holiday and all. I would certainly accept the vote if it is a positive vote, subject to Wade's final approval on the plan itself.
Okay, Wade?
Yeah, this property is probably one of the worst soils I've seen yet in this town. Quite a few years. We classified it as silt loam. I mean, it's a class 3 soils. It just doesn't move. Pick it up and shake it, and water comes out of it. Here's a nightmare. And so John did a nice picture of it, but
Right.
a nice picture, but
But actually, these 2 test pits came back as loam
As
from
loam, I
the
know.
sieve analysis,
That-
which allowed us to go to the
yeah, it did.
class 2 0.33 loam.
Yeah, which is nice. I guess the advantage of this is that the system was originally located in the backyard, and it worked. So why not continually use it? Just like the old fact, without any rhyme or reason. That's good, because the front yard isn't a good location for it. I think John's design is where it's located. It's a good location. I don't think he has any choice to it. He's going through the motion. He couldn't perk it, so he sieved it, and we got the results. And he's working through the DEP policy, which allows him to size the system in a certain way. We had a discussion out in the field, we're doing some work the other day, and I said, even make it bigger, John, if you don't want to, encroach it closer to the house, the bigger the better, because this is like the one-time shot for the gentleman. Because the front of the yard isn't good, and the other side, he's got a drain, he's got his water service, you don't want to elevate that, you don't want to change the elevation of his front yard, because it's kind of set, it's keeping the house dry, so you want to keep it as existing. So in the backyard is where the system's going to continually be built, like in the next 15, 20 years, the next one's going to go back there, because the soils just aren't very cooperative.
But it's a full-size bed. In other words, most of these IA systems are about 60% the size of a full-size bed. So this is a full-size bed.
And looking at John's design, his long-term acceptance rate, he's very conservative on it. I think actually, you could actually go lower with his, getting loam recorded in the back, he could actually go smaller, but he's keeping it as maximum size as he can. So I think it's a good thing for the homeowner. And so far, the Presby's been working. Actually, I had a Title V report on Boardman Street the other day with a Presby system, and the inspector actually dug a hole next to it. You actually designed it, John. And he observed it, and he had some descriptions of the leaching facility where he found some staining, and he dug down below it to see how well the soil looked and all that, and he came up with a positive results to it. It was working quite fine, and that's about maybe 5 years old. So that's the only testing or any kind of inspection I've seen on a Presby system since it's been coming around in the state of Massachusetts. So maybe it's got some good positive things for it, for a site like this. So tying up what I'm saying, I would recommend the approval of the variances so we can go ahead. We can just get the small detail stuff on the design. Like one thing I noticed that John didn't have a barrier between the leaching facility and a foundation. That's always a good thing to have, because you're not, you're 20 feet, you're 17, so you should have a barrier along the side of it. But it's an involved design.
Is that on the plan?
No, but it will be though.
No, I think what
Okay,
Wade's
all right.
saying is there might be some minor changes, but as far as the two variances or waivers, they're not gonna change. We're gonna be 17.6 feet from the house. There's just no way, the only way to avoid that is I'd have to be too close to the neighbor, so why get the neighbor involved, right? And it's really not that. He doesn't have a full foundation either, so, right? I mean, as you can see, he's here, he's not a full foundation. So,
What's happening to the existing cesspool? What do you
so
think
there's a
hap-
septic tank here, and then he's not really 100% sure, but there's a couple of leach pits that are right in here. So those just get abandoned, they just get removed. Those are most likely in the water table, right, so.
So you don't do anything with them? I thought I heard one of the last two
Yeah, they
variances, they were gonna
They
fill it
pump them
in.
and crush them, yeah. But in this case, I think they're actually within the new system, so they're gonna pump them and they're gonna remove them. They're gonna remove all of the soil that's been in contact with sewage and take it away. And fill it in with septic sand.
This here. That area.
You'd like to know where?
So I see something that says existing cesspool.
That's in the rear property, John.
Right here.
Right. But you're saying it actually goes into what the
Well,
new
he doesn't
really
know. So when he came to me, he asked me, should I spend the money to have my system inspected? And I said, no, because in the water table, your system's not gonna pass an inspection, so. So the system is somewhere over here. They'll find it, and it'll be abandoned.
Okay.
It's gonna be abandoned because we're getting rid of the existing septic tank and putting a 1,500 gallon 2-compartment tank. So right then and there, that abandons their system, right? And then there's a pump, so here's the septic tank, and then a pump up into the system. So everything below that is abandoned, it's gone.
All right, so we're basically being asked to grant 2 variances and allow for additional modifications to the plans it'll be worked out between you two guys.
That's correct, if that's,
All right.
if that's okay with the board.
All right. Well, we'll find out. So there, request for 2 variances. Well,
I make a motion that we accept, grant the 2 variances to the State Environmental Code, Section 15-104 percolation testing to allow the soil absorption system to be designed and constructed without percolation tests. And then Section 15.211, minimum setback distance to allow the soil absorption system to be less than 20 feet from a foundation wall. Variance request is 2.4 feet.
is there a second?
I second the motion.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right. Practically on schedule. So Betsy, do you have any appointments?
No.
No. Then we can talk about the minutes from 10:22. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes from 10:22?
I had one correction which I made, that's included, so
Is there a motion to approve the minutes from 10:22?
I make a motion that we approve the Board of Health minutes from October 22nd, 2019.
I second the motion.
Seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. All right, correspondence review, anything to talk
I
about?
don't have anything new, but I have a new folder to review. Next time.
All right, under new and old. The on-site sewage disposal regs.
Came to you pretty late. Did you guys have enough time to absorb it?
A little bit.
Was my format workable?
So I gave you a copy of the existing regulations, so you can see where we're at.
All right.
So, I just had a question about, we had talked about the garbage grinder.
Yes.
Look, at the last meeting, but we didn't talk about Section 2.
No,
So
but,
maybe you can tell us why you decided to.
sure, and this is for discussion, see if this is a good thing or a bad thing. You did ask me to re-examine a regulation because of Mr. McCarthy's approaching the board looking like for like a spot variance on a town project, which would probably end up having a line of people after him if you guys approved it. So I figured, well, why not just look at the regulations and see if it's worth looking at keeping it, or maybe removing it, or maybe changing a little bit. So I looked at the regulations, and I did talk to quite a bit of designers in the area that work with the regulations, just see what they thought about it. And the first one I came up with was, it's a redundancy of Title V, but it's just bringing it up the question up on the table. A lot of people come up to me and say, gee, you know, I have a septic system which I paid for new construction, and you need a primary, and then you require 100% reserve. But every time the primary fails, the reserves are always ignored, they're not used. And technically, because you go out there with a new engineer, we've gone through test holes, we design a whole new system. So So they go through the motion of the cost of hiring somebody, doing more field work, and then preparing another system altogether. Where in some of these plans, there's a reserve already designed for that system in case of primary fails.
So what is the dynamic that says we don't believe in using the reserve, if it's there?
Well, this regulation, this part of this regulation I wrote down confirms it. It says it's okay to use it, but under only certain conditions. As long as the system doesn't change for new construction, you're adding on to the house. If it's the same system, like a 3-bedroom house in a backyard and a trench fails, and then you go, oh man, it fails, and now you have to go through the expense, you can apply for a permit to use the existing reserve on it. And that would save a lot of design costs and engineering costs. And an engineering company asked me to look into that and see, because a lot of people, we don't know what to do with it. A lot of towns, you have to start from the scratch, beginning scratch. So I did look into it, and if you read the regulation, I do have, it would be as an emergency or an emergency repair work status versus an upgrade, new construction, or certain components. A repair status is a failed system, and you're replacing the component itself. You're replacing the trench with a trench. You're replacing the field with the field. This wouldn't be involved with you replacing a cesspool with a field, because that's considered an upgrade. You wouldn't be dealing with like a cesspool, yeah, so that would be the difference. So you're replacing the reserve that's actually on the original design, which would service the house in the repair process.
So why wouldn't you?
'Cause,
Well, why are engineers going off and doing a whole bunch of new design work?
because that's just the way, because a lot of times the engineers aren't involved in the original work, and you don't feel
We
comfortable
have a
with it.
plan that shows where the
Yeah.
reserve is,
Correct.
so what's preventing them from using it?
I don't know. Maybe because they're not installing it. Depends on what the case is. Do I advertise it? No. When I get a request for a site evaluation, I go out there and I perform the work. I'm just a part of the system coming through. I'm not the clerk of the work, so I'm not coordinating people on what they should do, what they shouldn't be doing. But
So
they're,
we've designed a system which has expansion space built in it.
yeah.
And for whatever reason, folks are coming along and designing whole new systems rather than using the expansion space that's already been approved.
Correct. In some cases, it might be because they want the engineer they hired might want to use an IA system, which might be less costly of installing it, or might be smaller. There might be numerous reasons, I don't really know. But that's so, and this regulation, it actually addresses it. It says it's okay, you can actually apply for emergency or a repair permit, and you're able to use your reserves. Of course, that's upon the applications submitted to the town, and that's the request. And someone like in my position will look at it and say, yeah, it does fit, you can do it. Or they might go, no, you can't do it because something else is going on, or something's changed, or that system is no longer recognized, or now it's encroaching groundwater. It might be some regulation, a change, so that it might make this system inferior of just replacing the reserve.
Is there-
It's not one fits all, each site's different. But there are cases out there, people are able to use their reserve if their primary fails.
Okay. well,
Is that just temporary? Is that just for an emergency? Is there a time frame within which they need to get the whole thing?
It would be for a repair too. If you have a Title V inspection, I guess it fails, and you go, okay, you may be able to use your original design for the house and have the reserve placed in. You won't have to go through hiring an engineer and doing new test holes and upgrading the whole system, or repeating the process that they did for
Right.
new construction.
So if the scope of the project itself hasn't changed from the original building, the original home, presumably that's Plan A, use that system.
Correct.
It's the least expensive way. I just wonder whether the homeowner is even aware of the fact that that's out there.
Maybe a lot of people aren't aware of that.
Well,
Or
you would think
or
so.
maybe the industry doesn't really want to deal with it as much.
So I guess, I'm sorry, maybe I misstated my question. So so the primary system, the original part of it's failed, you have the reserve. So is the reserve, is it just going to be used in an emergency situation to repair the primary system, or are they going to rely completely on just the reserve?
They would rely completely on the reserve.
So what happens if that fails?
Then you come back and have to redo it all over again.
Okay,
Then
so
you-
we're giving them a chance to not have to do anything.
Well, they're still doing something. It's still
We got
expensive.
new trenches.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still
But there's
expensive.
a space for them already set up.
But things might change. A yard might change, things,
Yeah.
conditions might change. So it's not all, but there are some cases out there. And that's what this particular regulation, which you would be adding into your regulation, is recognizing that the reserves are there and you can use it for a repair status. Not an upgrade. An upgrade's different. Or not for new construction.
So like,
So for instance, they had, and
Addition on-
and the reason why I said 1995, April 1995, is because prior to 1995 was the old old design, the 1978 code. And back then, they allowed pits, 4x4 galleys, which aren't accepted anymore because they're too deep. You can only have a 2-foot trench now, and you can only have like a 3-foot pit. You're not allowed to have long systems into the ground anymore. So if you had a pits and you wanted to use a reserve, you couldn't, because the pits are no longer acceptable unless you want, technically they are acceptable, but you can only use 2 feet of the effective depth to it. So you would, if you had 2 pits, you would have to be replaced with 6 pits. So sometimes it's impractical. But if you had trenches, you could possibly use the reserves as your primary.
this wouldn't be something that somebody could rely on to, let's say, put an addition on their home and
No,
increase the amount of.
that's not a repair, that'd be an
Okay.
upgrade,
All right.
or new construction. If they wanted to change it somewhere, or they're putting a foundation here, and they want to take, well, can we take this system and put it in the front? No, you can't do it, it has to be right where it's designed to go.
So, tonight we've been talking about upgrades from cesspools to septic systems, right? So this design has a reserve in it?
No,
Is that what we're
no,
saying?
That design is the reserve for that cesspool. Because that house is it's existing, and the first system that was designed for that house was a cesspool.
Right.
That's its primary. Cesspools are now no longer are legal.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But now that they're going to this, is there no reserve in this going forward?
It's not showing a reserve. That design is not showing a reserve.
So which designs show a reserve?
Anything, I guess, from 1995 to today's date.
That's not a when did
cesspools
cesspools
Like new
go up?
construction, like new construction.
So weren't they
Like, these are
used
all
this?
upgrades.
Yeah, I'd have to actually go into the file and pull some out and show it to you if you want to, after the meeting. Just so educate yourself, so you see the difference between different designs and what would a reserve would be that would be usable, what wouldn't be usable. Because that's what the application would come in. It would come in with the application, go, no, I'm sorry, you can't go in as a repair because blah, blah, blah. You'd have to go seek more field work. And then your application would be, I guess, denied.
So do you see repairs using the reserve?
No,
No, I
I
mean,
don't.
it's
Even though
just-
they're there.
Even though
Rather
I-
they're
yeah,
plans.
but
That's
it's-
weird.
I know, that's what it's so,
Do other towns permit the use of the reserve?
No, I don't think many people use it at all. No, it's
but
not.
why
it's-
wouldn't people want it? Is it more expensive to use the reserve than it is to put in a whole new system?
I think it's a risk. I don't know. A lot of people don't want to work into it. You might not get people who want to do it. The contractors may not want to do it because it's a dirty job. If you have a failed trenches,
Yeah.
they're saturated. So if you walk to it, sometimes you walk on it and the ground is squishy. It's saturated. It's not a good job. It's not a fun job. You're digging into it and you're getting contaminated soil. You're working in a very dangerous environment. So some people will prefer not to work in dirty soils. They'd rather have a nice clean system designed in a different area.
Well, for new construction, don't we require that those reserve spaces be available?
Correct.
And now we're hearing nobody uses them.
No.
So what's the point of making them required in the first place?
It's a state law. Now, your typical design you see in this town is probably trench with reserve in between, trench, reserve, trench, reserve. And you'll find that a lot in new construction. If you had a field or trenches here and trenches there, you would double the field work. You'd have 2 holes and 2 perks, and a perk representing that field, and then you'd have 2 holes and a perk representing that field. If you combine the primary and reserves together, the state allows you to do 2 holes, 2 perks, and then you're done. So you save a lot of field work by designing that way also. Trench with reserve, trench with reserve. But abandoning the primary and going into the reserve, it could be considered very dirty work. It's saturated. You have to pump it out, let it dry out. Contractor's out there. His machine's big, he's sitting on these trenches, they're wet, machine's sinking into the dirty ground. So physically looking at it, it's not very desirable. And so the industry may not like it. But there could be some cases where it could work. And some could, it's available. And this regulation allows people knowing that it's available on a repair status. It's not telling them they have to do it, but if someone like yourself comes in, well, why can't I use my reserve? You come in and get a permit, say, sure, you can do it. And now you look at the contractors, and now you have to get someone to do it for you. That might be a difficult piece of the puzzle. But it's out there. So I looked at it, and it's not bad. It goes with no increase in original design flow would be allowed for the application. Also, it would require that you have an as-built by the original designer or a registered engineer or a registered sanitarian prior to issuing the certificate of compliance. So there's still some cost to it, too. Now, I thought in the past, you used to have contractors do as-builts, way back in the 90s and 80s, used to hand do it. And in this case here, there are some very good reputable contractors who could probably do their own as-built. But the problem with that is then you have the fox watching the chicken coop. You don't want someone out there certifying their own work. It just doesn't work that way. But so there is some responsibilities to this regulation. We still want a certified as-built, making sure that's done properly. So you get savings on repetitive field work, and could save someone some money. Doesn't mean they have to do it, though.
So we're just so I understand what we're doing tonight, we are listening to Wade's comments, and then do we accept the comments, or do we ask for a hearing before we accept the comments? How does it work?
I would say tonight you look at it, read it, absorb it. If you like it, or you might want to have questions on it, you want to go ahead with it, I would recommend you have a public hearing about inviting people to come in. Even before the public hearing, these could be incorporated into like the regulations, different types, so people could read
That's
it
what I
and see what it
wanted
looks
to,
like. And what we did before is that we submitted it to the industries that use this regulation and asked them for comments, written comments, verbal comments, and then you would hold a public hearing.
So tonight, we could accept these and modify the regs, a draft, to go out for comment at the public hearing. Or else, we could read, do that
How
in
about
a
we
week.
read it first?
Well, I mean,
So-
do you want to read them all tonight? or
Well,
do
no,
we wanna
I think what we need to do is take this home.
Take it home, all right.
And look at these
That's
two
what I was
documents side by
suggesting.
side and see how they fit together, and, make any changes we want to in the way it's written.
You might want to add some more, you might say, no, I don't like that, I don't accept it, you might say,
Well, let's, in the next cycle, before this next meeting, let's all take a look at this.
okay.
And come back with questions and thoughts, and revisit this.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, so now I want to go to the second one. The second, Section 3, specifications of systems design. If you want to take a look at it, the full one, if you look at the page 3, last paragraph, I'm actually the author of that, and way in, Tom, you voted it in. The reason for that paragraph was for people who had existing homes and he wanted to add on to their home, they could use the information on their permit that their house is built on, for high groundwater, and they can use the adjacent lots too, approved permits. And what that opens up is past field work, gathering the data in and being able to use it to design a septic system for their new construction of their home. So if they want it, so it would just speed up the process for them. It's good information, why not use it? It's sitting in archives of town hall. So if you had a house in a neighborhood, and in June, you and your wife decide you want to add on a bedroom to it, without this regulation in play, you would have to wait for high groundwater season, because adding on a bedroom is considered new construction. So it kicks you into the new construction regulations of the local town. This particular paragraph allows you to, your engineer to at least examine the work that was done on your home originally and the neighboring lots to see if there's any high groundwater readings. And if there is, they might be able to transfer it over to your lot and you'll be able to continue on with your project. Of course, this also has its backups too. It has to be reviewed by the health agent. All past recorded soil information for design would be subject to health agent's approval. The reason why the health agent is because that person is knowledgeable of the soils and they'll be able to see if the information that they want to use is actually it will actually work. It actually represents the annual high groundwater season for that area of the town. So that right there gave the homeowner some advantage to do new construction year-round, using information around the area. And that particularly came up with real situations in town where people were adding on bedrooms to their home, and I did look at the information surrounding the house, and there were like models next door, like 30 feet away, that we could use, but we couldn't because we had to go for high groundwater season. And so that's how this all came about. What I'm writing here on this proposal is to omit the first sentence of which would actually include all development in town. So if you had a piece of property in a neighborhood, a vacant piece of land, and you wanted to build a house on it, the new construction, you're also able to use information on the surrounding lots next to it. Of course, with the judgment from the health agent of the town, that's working as a health agent would accept that information. So you could also use, if your neighbor had high groundwater in January, next door, you would be able to use that information if the soils are consistent onto this new project on your property, other than waiting 6 or 8 months for high groundwater season. And there might be some situations where the health agent might say, well, you can use that information as supplement, but I still want to go out there high groundwater season because I don't trust the information. It's too old, or I don't know anything about it. So it's just giving an option of someone who's developing in town to use the archives of Town Hall. Title V changed in 1995, and that's 24 years ago. So you have a quarter of a century of information in your town records of soil percolation tests, Form 11s, Form 12s, licensed soil evaluators going out there, people trained to look at the soils, and then information sitting out there, and why not use it? So that's what this paragraph does. And not only does it open up for the resident homes that now can use information that's adjacent to the property, now it opens up to all land for new construction. And it's not a pass either. You still have to go through the review process. And it does not substitute percolation, deep observation holes and perk tests where the leaching facility would actually be proposed. It would be supplemental information they could use. That's something to think about. Now, if you had a piece of property, like an acre of land with a house on it, and around it's 50 acres of land, and you go, oh, we like to use this soil here because we're building the subdivision. No, that's not going to work because it just doesn't represent the soils. But if you had a property here and you want to do a approval not required lot next door, and the soils are very similar, you might be able to use that high groundwater as supplementing the perk holes and deep observation holes and percolation tests you'd have to do on that property for new construction. you can use to work together if it works.
But could the subdivision builder complain or argue that what you've stated in here allows them to use that single home on that acre of land to do the 50 acres around?
Can't control what people think or say, but the regulation is pretty straightforward. It said all past recorded soil information for design will be subject to health agent's approval. Approval based on soil consistency, year and month the information was witnessed, soil texture, redomorphic features, observations during times of annual high groundwater as set by the Board of Health, and observations outside annual high groundwater season. Existing soil information does not override required deep holes, percolation tests, and observations for models that support the subject's septic designs. So if someone said they wanted to use that front lot information, they would still have to go out there and do deep observation holes and perk tests. And if the soils are totally different, the argument's over. And if they're still upset, they can still go to the Board of Health themselves and say, and you can say, no, we don't want to enforce that. It's not good.
Is this considered standard practice in other parts of the country or even in other parts of the state? Like where does these words come from?
Which words are that? The
Your
paragraph?
revised paragraph.
I wrote it.
Well, that's all yours?
Yeah.
Oh, nice job. That's well
You
written.
approved it.
Oh, no, the revised stuff, just the new stuff.
Oh, yeah, I wrote that, yeah.
Wrote that too?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, good man. All right.
But the only thing with this change is the only thing that comes out is this initial sentence. at the
Yeah, yeah,
beginning.
it's the
The
same
entire
thing, yeah, I
paragraph
shouldn't
is
take,
exactly the
yeah,
same.
I wrote both of them. But the revised one is identical to what's already in your regulation. All we did is omitted the
Omit the
first sentence.
Which actually isn't
Oh,
much of
oh.
a sentence anyway,
Oh,
so I
all right,
didn't
all
quite
right.
understand it
Well, the
myself.
first sentence, I guess it does sound, I read it myself, said, what am I trying to say? It's saying modifications to existing houses.
Oh, I see.
Okay, so that means construction, new houses that require an increase of design flow. In other words, adding a bedroom. Okay, if you're adding a bedroom above the existing capacity that the design is, so you have a three-bedroom house, you're adding a fourth bedroom, and then the fourth bedroom design requirement is 440, it's higher than what you already have existing, then you can use soil information from the surrounding lots or on your same property.
Well, now I know why I like it so much.
Yeah, you already approved
It's
it.
already in there.
All right. All right, so moving on.
Wait, okay, so, all right, so that's that one, all right, so that's opening up soil data approved by the town, as supplement information, so that's where that one goes. So now we're going to section 3, specifications for systems design. This is what Mr. McCarthy started, the whole thing.
Garbage grinder.
This is it. And then, so I'll look at number 5 and say, omit the entire sentence. And that's dealing with all sewage disposal designs for dwelling shall include provisions for a garbage grinder. Upgrades of existing failing systems shall not be required to include the provision for a garbage grinder, provided that a suitable document is recorded in the Norfolk County Registry of Deeds, which signifies that no garbage grinder shall be installed at or used in the dwelling on the subject property. And then I put, in the revised sentence would read, it would be replaced with this. Proposed septic tanks for family dwelling units with a design flow of less than 1,000 gallons per day will meet the design criteria specifications in 310 CMR 15.224 multiple component tanks. And you're gonna sit back going, what?
No, those were the tanks you were talking about that had they were separate. They were
Correct.
Yes.
That's correct. So if you go into Title V, anything with a design greater than 1,000 gallons, you have to have a 2-compartment tank or 2 tanks in series. What this is saying is that now, not only is 1,000 gallons design greater, but also you're saying all designs for residential houses. It doesn't matter if this 1,000 gallon per day, setback or goal is no longer there. Now it's all design flows will have to meet the specifications of a 2-compartment tank. As in Title V, you're required, if you're over 1,000 gallons design, to do it anyhow. So you're just making it a little more strict to saying all tanks.
Okay. So all references to garbage grinders are going to go away.
Think about that, yeah. That's what this proposal is. And that means, so the pros of that would be, it become a designer's choice. The designer sitting down there, or the homeowner's choice. When they're designing a septic system for a house, they can design a garbage grinder, or they cannot design a garbage grinder. It's up to them. That's that. But with the 2 compartment tank sitting there, if someone down the line goes, well, now I really want a garbage grinder, they could actually, it'd be easier for them to add on a garbage grinder, because you just have increased the field, not the tank. The tank's pretty expensive to replace. And just one point, garbage grinders are considered not a good use of an on-site septic system. It's not good to have a garbage grinder, and requiring it in the design, you're almost encouraging or advertising garbage grinders. If you talk to anybody in the world of septic world, and you go, gee, what do you think of garbage grinders? I want to put one in. They'll go, don't. You lose the life of your system if you don't maintain it. Technically, through Title V, if you have a garbage grinder, you should be pumping it, on a residential level, you should be pumping it annually, the tank, because it's that much solids in it, and it's actually in the code itself. If you have a residential garbage grinder, then your tank is recommended to be pumped annually. If you don't have a garbage grinder, they recommend it at least every 3 years. So that's the difference between the two. Now, so on the repairs, it would be the designer's choice too. If you have a repair and you want a garbage grinder, you can put it in. If you don't have to have it recorded on your deed. Your deed's not touched. There's no recording at all. There's no belt and suspenders going on. There's no babysitting. Go out there and stick a Home Depot garbage grinder in your house through ignorance, then you may pay a costly penalty. I've worked in numerous towns. I've worked in towns where garbage grinders were only applied through the designer's choice. And in my 10 years in those towns, we never had a rampant failure due to garbage grinders being placed in by all these people. It wasn't like a high priority or a major threat saying, boy, we got 60 repairs this year. It's all because people putting garbage grinders in and it's out of control. I've never had that experience or seen that.
Was a part of that just the conservative nature of that 110, value, that maybe that's pessimistic? You don't really need to have that kind of capacity?
Then increasing by 50% is even worse.
Yeah, but I'm saying, even if you didn't have the increasing, but you just had the 110, maybe that sort of has built into it, the capacity to deal with the garbage grinders.
If I had an on-site septic and had a garbage grinder, I'd probably want to double it, triple it. I wouldn't.
Well, sure, but I'm just,
No, I don't think a 110 would even be, no.
if you're pumping it once a year,
Yeah. I don't think a 110 would,
no,
I mean, it would survive it for a while if you did pump it, but
with the 2 chambers.
if you have 2 chambers, I wouldn't chance it. It's a lot of solids. It depends how much you use it.
Yeah.
Even your dishwashing, your dishwashing machine has a small grinder below it. It eats it up and spits out. So if you don't clean your dishes before you put them in a dishwasher, you don't have a strainer in your kitchen sink, a lot more solids go into your system than you realize.
Okay, well, we have some other things to do tonight. Why don't we digest this, shall we say? And
There was,
no, you got one more
thing.
I forget one?
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
one more.
what was it?
Also,
Number
too, I want,
13.
so about the multiple tanks too, it's also a cleaner effluent, the 2 compartment tanks. It's a cleaner effluent, so even if they don't have a garbage grinder, it's a good thing. All right, and then the last one, number 13, I recommended, or this is something up in the air that, but I didn't write down what you actually had in the code. Let's see, number 13 would be,
Pump electrical system shall be equipped with a
Number
transfer
13?
switch to allow connection to a generator.
correct, it's the transfer switch topic that comes up all the time when I'm out in the field, and during any kind of revisions, I put it, well, at least in this town, I put it on the topic on the table. The last time the board that was gathered here said, no, we want to keep the gen switch on the regulations. They felt strong enough where they wanted to keep it in it because it came on the table. So, of course, we're revising it, I'm putting it on the table again. And the way I wrote it was two ways. One, omit the entire sentence altogether. So a gen switch is not required if anybody has a pump system, meaning that they don't have to buy a transfer. If you lose your electricity in your house, this transfer switch will allow you to put a portable generator into the switch, and then you have a fuse going from your electric motor in your sewage pump chamber to that generator. You can hook it on, and it has power, external power on its own. So if you have electricity, you're able to run your septic system. A lot of complaints I'm getting out in the field of these people talking to me are owners of private wells. They're saying, if I don't have electricity, I don't have water coming in. So that means I don't have water going out. So why do I have to have a gen switch if I'm on a private well? And I said, good question. If you don't have a gen switch, good question, but it's the regulations, so you gotta have to put one in. And so they do, and usually I suggest that they could buy one with multiple fuses and maybe put their well water on one, so if they do lose electricity, they're able to have an operating house, got water coming in, water going out. So in this recommendation for a change, I suggested maybe opt out the entire sentence, or add the following sentence: buildings that are dependent on private wells for portable water source may opt out of this requirement. Because if they don't have juice allowing the water coming in, why should they be paid for a gen switch for that pump? And it's like, it could be from $500 to $1,000 putting it in. And if you have an older house, an electrician says, I can't hook that up because your box is too old, you know, it's on like the circular fuses, or even the older ones are like dynamite sticks, they might have to upgrade the whole box. So that's food for thought.
Okay, let's lunch on it, and
No, it's good, thank you for listening to me. It's a long night.
we'll discuss it next time, whatever the next time turns out to be. Which brings us to the Bush Pond area, starting with our catch and release signage. Where do we stand on signs around Bush Pond?
So, there are no signs, but we could put up the state signs. That would be at the cost of the town to put them up, which is what Rich sent us a letter. He did some research. And we could put up those signs saying that pregnant women and children under 12 shouldn't be eating from fish from fresh water in Massachusetts. Specifically, we could also test, but we've already tested Bush Pond, or at least according to the Weston and Sampson report from 2014. No, 2019, it was tested in 2014, and there was arsenic and lead. So, and the other thing is, we also have other ponds. Populatic Pond, which right now has been tested by the state and has, what is it, having it, chloridane and, what else? It has a few, I don't have the report here in front of me. It has 3 things already that the state has tested for. One of them was chloridane, DDT, and I forget what the third one was. So, what do we do? I don't know. Are there other ponds in town too? I mean, we know that people fish from
Oh, sure.
the,
There's Highland Lake. They fish down in Mirror Lake, certainly, of course, that's 2 towns.
other than,
Populatic, Kingsbury.
right? Well,
uh,
So
So where does it
what's the
stop?
question? What's the question? Do we put signs on more than one pond? Who's paying for the signs?
right.
Who pays to
Do
put
we
up the
put
signs?
signs on all the ponds saying that pregnant women and children under? pregnant women and nursing mothers, women, and children under 12 shouldn't eat from freshwater ponds unless they're stocked. That's what the signs say that the state has. We're gonna put them all over town, or do we want to advertise? I don't know.
Well, there are ways to get the word out besides signage. I mean,
Well, we have it
certainly-
on our website now, right? On the Board of Health website. Didn't we, and did we place that, didn't we put that on the Board of Health website? I know it's late.
I mean, do we have, are there legal requirements for the town to post these properties? What happens if some pregnant mom eats a fish out of that pond and comes back to us 5 years later and says, my child has learning disabilities because I was exposed to levels of those chemicals from that pond? I mean, what's wrong with posting something that says don't eat it?
I don't know where we stop, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay.
That's my question. Where do you put it on the pond? Does someone go around and see where people fish from?
Probably.
And, I mean, who's gonna do that? I don't know. And so we have to identify all the ponds in town then, and maybe they're not fishing on the day that we walk through. You know what?
Give it to the water department because it's water. That's what I would suggest. Only kidding, but, I mean, no. I don't know. I mean, there has to be, so I'd probably put it on the Lawrence Street Bridge, right? Because that's where they fish from.
Yeah, but that's
don't know
just
the other-
because
I just
folks
don't know
have
the other
brought it to
ponds.
our attention
I just don't
that
know the other pond.
people fish on the Lawrence Street Bridge.
Right.
I can tell you that people fish at Stony Brook Reservation. And it doesn't say.
Oh, really?
Yes, there are two, there's
the dam,
kingfish.
or-
No, at Stony Brook Wildlife Center, the Audubon.
Yeah.
People actually, that's Department of Recreation, it's Mass Department of Recreation,
Oh, right.
actually land.
I've walked around there, but never
Yeah,
seen
well,
anybody
the-
fishing.
Yeah, you can fish from the spillway, one of the spillways, and then near the dam, you can fish near the dam. There are 3 places where you
Okay.
can fish. So there's nothing, I don't know where to start or stop, I guess. Other than the folks that brought it to our attention from Bush Pond, we could certainly post there, but to your question, if someone comes back and says, they contaminated fish. I mean, is some of the onus not on the folks that do the fishing? To go to the freshwater fish consumption advisory list? Which isn't all-inclusive on,
Well, they probably don't even know.
no, exactly.
That's a good point. I mean, there are other places around town that people fish, and so we need to, if we're gonna do it in one place and single that one place out, we really should be doing it other places.
Maybe those new digital boards, is that what do we call them? What do we call them? Electronic digital board. We
Well,
bought
they've only
one.
bought a third one of, or the
No, a
second
second
one of?
one, a
All
second
right.
one. Maybe that would be a way to advertise around town.
I'm not sure the fire
Alright.
department will loan that to us for that purpose.
Well, it's about public health, why not?
I don't know. Could we, I don't know. How about an Eagle Scout project? Identify the ponds in town, see where the people are fishing. Give them the signs, put them up.
Getting the scouts involved, that's a really good idea.
I have no idea of who the scouts are in town, or how they run, or anything.
Mr. Chairman, before you put posting any signs, anyway, there's some kind of reason for the sign to be posted.
Well, according to the Department of Environmental Health, Massachusetts Department of Environmental Health, they're saying that you should not eat
Yeah.
fish from freshwater
This
ponds
is a
in
policy.
Massachusetts.
This is a statewide policy that says you should be
Yes.
eating fish from freshwater ponds in
If
Massachusetts.
you are a pregnant or nursing mom or a child under 12.
Is that Great Ponds? Because they usually,
All freshwater.
they look at Great Ponds, test Great Ponds. When you say all.
They're saying all, just, don't ask me why. And then they have a list of where they have tested, which is 6 pages long.
Great Ponds.
And so maybe,
I guess my only question would be, does posting a sign there, not to impugn anyone from the Lawrence Street neighborhood, but does posting a sign there imply anything in particular that would potentially
it's pretty.
cause anything in the future in terms of what happens with that piece of property that might be
I don't know.
attached? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't know. So this is fish
We
consumption.
have some folks from the neighborhood here tonight. What's your feeling about this?
Are you worried about the cost of a small sign?
Well, we're actually talking right now about, does it
It's
have an
more.
impact on the viewer? What's wrong with that property they had to post it?
Well, if you cite that it's a Massachusetts law or advisory and where it's from, I would say it's a useful sign. People do fish there. We just built the bridge. It's an invitation for people to fish there because it's a beautiful boardwalk. And people have also done it in the winter with ice fishing. So I think you need a sign, at least. There's nothing on the website. Well, is this on your website, or you went
Yeah.
to the health?
Yeah, it's the link to the state fish consumption
Advisory.
advisory.
But I guess what
Oh,
I'm
it-
thinking about is, you know, where do we stop? Why should we only do it on Lawrence Street?
Well, you gotta start somewhere, right? If you,
I guess I just wouldn't do one. I would either do all of them or none of them.
If you want to be consistent, there's a green sign that says Lawrence Street, like every other street sign, every other town, and there's not a green sign any other street in the whole town. Why start Lawrence Street? I don't know.
You have a
Right.
unique street sign, is that?
We have a green sign like every other town in the state, except for Norfolk, has the white fence posts. But Lawrence Street has a green sign. Why?
It might have had
I don't
something to
know.
do with the
You
state
tell me.
involvement with the bridge.
It's not consistent.
I
So
don't know,
I
it
mean,
had something to do with the
you can
bridge.
drive down the road and save 5,000 inconsistencies.
Well, you're unique.
It's a brand-new
Think about it.
bridge.
I think it's
So
something
maybe
with state involvement with
when
it.
you build something new, make it better, right?
well, people do come, so, because it's a new bridge. And people from out of town come, so I doubt they're looking on the website. You know, depends on, what are you afraid of? Afraid of the neighbors? Are you afraid of the owner of the property, or?
I'm not afraid of anything. Again, my
No,
suggestion
no.
would be that we don't necessarily just put it on one
One,
pond. If we're gonna put
exactly.
all the signs up, they should be either on none of them or all of them.
Well,
Not
I
just
agree.
yours.
You could do all of them, but you
Where
gotta start
are
with
they
at least
all?
one of them and get the process, see what size you want, what's appropriate.
Yeah, see, I don't find that a compelling argument.
It's
You
one
wanna do
different-
them all? Do all the water bodies in town then. Do them all.
One discrepancy you could consider too is whether you're actually fishing off of public land, right? So when you're on that walkway, you're not on private property, you're on town land and access from the town as opposed to if somebody finds a pond completely on private property. There's better public access.
I think,
Like you couldn't put a sign out on the Buckley Man property, right? You could maybe, but technically people are trespassing going there. But when they're on the public walkway, it's public land that they're fishing from.
I know I looked at Populatic Pond, just on the website, and it said that there was a boat landing. So I'm guessing people could fish from
Well,
a
there is a
boat.
public access point,
But I don't know about the other ponds in town, or lakes.
yeah.
That's,
I guess we'd have to identify each pond. Is there public access to the ponds where people go to
You
fish?
should know,
Well-
the town should know that.
I think baby steps are
Adopt-
pretty good. You do have a freshwater fish consumption advisory list in front of you, and Norfolk is listed at least 3 times in here. And maybe those bodies of water could be a start of the posting, because it's interesting, because they talk about the hazards it has, but also they have the fish advisory, and some of it's pretty intense. Like a P1 would be children younger than 12 years of age, pregnant women, women of childbearing age who may become pregnant, and nursing mothers should not eat any of the affected fish species in this body of water. And that particular one is,
Charles River?
Charles River, between
Charles River.
Medway Dam and Franklin, Medway, and South Natick Dam in Natick. And it says the towns that it covers, and Norfolk's part of it. So, and also P5 is another one too.
Yeah.
General public should limit consumption of all fish from this body of water to 2 meals per month. So those two, a sign with those 2 advisories on it would be very useful for the public. But I wouldn't go through all the ponds in town, because you don't have any information. You have to have information before you become, before you start advising people. I'll give you an example. If you go to a swimming pond, a recreational swimming pond, you test it and it's bad with bacteria, and you say no swimming, but you're not gonna run around to all the streams everywhere around and say no swimming, no swimming. Why? Because we found one over there. It's like, well, what about over here? Well, you have to test it before you can actually tell people, you know, be advisory. That's my advice. Then you have another pond here too, Populatic Pond, and it says, and its fish advisory there is pretty intense too. It's talking about a P1. Again, they're talking about children younger than 12, pregnant women, women of childbearing age, and also nursing mothers may be affected, should not eat any of the affected fish species. So they're saying, don't eat any of it if you got this condition. And they got another one saying, P5, they're saying the general public should consume all fish in this body of water to 2 meals per month. Well, Populatic Lake, if I just moved in there like that gentleman there today, going, oh, great, I can fish off my deck, my dock, and it gets all these like benthic type of animals that are eating all the stuff down below, and he starts eating it constantly. This advisory is really helpful for him. It's only 2 meals a week.
But
And then-
that's the point. Where do you put the sign? He's fishing off of his private property.
Well,
This is
you-
another.
Well, you gotta take things in steps. You gotta use the tools that you have. Use the public access ways. You use the public ramps.
But
Public
that's why I
land.
thought putting it up
And
on
then
a sign in town.
Good
would
person,
be, you
good
know.
person asked the conservation, where do we have conservation land around these areas? Because we want, and where are the paths? We want to put one post sign. You can't blanket it, because you can't, it's just impossible. But if you put a post where other posts are, like maybe a trash can or something like that, or do not walk your dog, or pick up after your dog, that type of stuff, you put it there, it'd be really useful for the public, because this is good information. It's also, make you think a little bit. You want
But
to buy.
in general, for every body of water in Massachusetts, those are the ones that have been tested. This is what DPH suggested is for every body of fresh water in Massachusetts.
Oh, yeah, but
So
that makes a
it's
good
like
point, that we have data to support this. There's just a general sweeping, you gotta be careful out there, kind of a sign, or there's something that can be a little more directed. So, especially if we have public access. If we have public access, and we do know that people are launching their boats there, and perhaps some of them are fishing there, all right, maybe we need to think about putting up some kind of signage that says, hey, look, if you're gonna go fishing here, be aware that there are some recommended limitations on how often you.
And this is really good information, because it's actually telling you the bodies of water, and you're getting really specific, and actually have the testing of it, mercury, and a lot of mercury, and that's usually from coal-firing plants out Midwest, and the exhaust blows over New England, and we get it through acid rain. So we're not even creating the mercury, but it's coming into our environment through rain, through the environment. You got chloridane, DDT, you got some pretty scary stuff here, so that would be very useful. Something of this nature, Department of Public Health comes out with an advisory, blankets the whole state, which is pretty typical. I'd probably take something like this and put this on a website, and maybe post in the post office, public areas, as a poster, and that'd be satisfactory. You can read it. But going around placing this in woods and stuff, and there might be a stream here. It's a good thought. It's a compliment on that, but it might be overwhelming. And also very costly. But this page here, this is a good start of posting on waters, because they are saying They actually tested, hopefully, the meats of the fish in here, and this is what they're coming up with. So this is a good step, and this right here is so generic, I'd put it in the website, and I'd put maybe in a local newspaper or public buildings, as, just like this, because that's where it came from. It didn't come from us. So if someone comes up to you and says, can you tell me a little bit about this freshwater stuff here? And you go, well, I'm not really sure about it, but the state gave us the advisory, and we're out here pushing out the information. So you're not taking the responsibility of it. That's a good recommendation, that's right. But this is great. I used to get these advisory too, but usually they're from Great Ponds, and Great Ponds are a certain mileage of land, and the state owns it, and they go out there and they test it. So you get a lot of advisories from Great Ponds, and so you go, okay, great. But going out and actually posting it, I compliment you if you could take that route, because that's pretty good. If I lived around Populatic Pond, I'd want to know I should only eat the fish twice a week, not make
Twice
it
a month? Is it twice a week or twice a
I
month?
think it's twice a week. Let me read it again, just to make sure, since we're on film
But
here.
I think maybe talking with conservation.
Oh, look at this. No, this says, 2 meals per month. Yes. Thank you.
Wouldn't be a bad start to kind of talk a
All
bit
right, you know
about where the
what?
access is.
And the cost of it would, I don't know. Sometimes, I made signs for no swimming signs, and you make it out of the computer, and then you put a plastic wrap around it. That's a start. Well, it's not the best, but it's a start. It's a warning. It's something out there.
All right,
Tape it.
I'll tell you what, I like the idea of reaching out to the Conservation Commission, because they're in charge of wetlands. Not necessarily all the public health issues, certainly, as much as the health of the wetland itself, but we have common interests. So why don't we get together with the Conservation Commission on this? And actually, maybe the scouts are, who's the local bait shop around here? Is there one on 1A?
There is one on 1A.
I don't know.
There is, it's over by the liquor store.
Yeah.
Same tackle shop.
We gotta talk to the fishermen here. Otherwise, we're kind of flying blind a little bit.
That's a good idea.
That'd be a great place for a sign.
That'd be a great place for a sign.
We're just,
You may not post it.
yeah, the Board of Health is here to advise people. It's already been accepted.
Right.
It's already been accepted. These are well-known areas to avoid or limit the consumption of the fish. It's here, and it's broken down even what's out there. So now our job is to take this information, put it to a sign, and put it out there. So if someone goes out there, it would save someone's health.
All right.
Well,
Fran,
Rich
you wanted to say
McCarthy
something.
did a lot of work already. I mean, I don't have his email in front of me, and I can't get on.
Whose email?
Rich McCarthy's email. So, if anybody recalls, I reached out to Mass Department of Public Health, sampling Bush Pond and posting warning signs about eating fish caught. I heard back from Michael Beatty, bathing beach inspector, that DEP, that the DEP has a freshwater fishing sample program. Attached is a fishing sample form, which for some reason I printed out. But the back of it actually says, do you and your family fish at this location? So I think it's really for a homeowner, if the guy on Populatic Pond wanted to have the pond tested. But anyway, we could have the ponds tested, other than Populatic has already been tested. Each year, DEP receives requests from various communities, and based on the requests, we had a sample. Attached is a poster that we could post for Populatic Pond that mentions specifically chloridane, mercury, and DDT.
Yep, I got it right up here.
So, the cost of making posters and posting them would be at the town's expense. He sent a general advisory that the town could post without testing being done, which is what we're talking about, the general advisory. And that was it. The cost of making the posters and posting them would be at the town's expense. That's not the problem. The problem is where to post and how many places and.
I think that's interesting, those request forms. Could we just fill them out as homeowners in Norfolk to test each of the bodies of water?
Well, but
And
it has to be
submit
that you
that?
actually go fishing there. So
Yeah,
to be honest
right.
about it, we should probably get fishermen to fill these out.
Or leave it, have it put it on the website so they can see it and then fill out themselves. and maybe share the information with them. This right here is a good sign, too. This
Well,
is a
that's the
bit-
general
Yeah, that's a very,
sign
that's a
that
nice
he
one to
was
post, too.
talking about posting, which was, you know, if we have a body of water that hasn't been tested, we could post it there.
Yeah, it's an excellent idea.
Wait,
But-
But that's the generic one, right?
That's the
That
generic
just says
one.
that in Massachusetts, you gotta be careful.
Yeah.
All right.
But, and this
Yeah.
is saying, we got more information, please
That's-
read
yeah.
and be careful. But this is saying, there might be something, and then you have this form right here, in case you want to,
Which I started to fill out a little
in
bit.
case you're wondering, and you don't have like a government agency to pay for all this stuff, so you go requesting fish testing, and you can do it.
I think that's a great idea.
I like this idea, too.
Fill that one out.
Well, I
Send them
think,
in.
Yeah, fill
Test
them all
the
out.
fish.
Fish there all the time, huh?
I fish there all the time.
where do you fish?
I do not fish.
We're just making this up.
Okay.
Well, you
gotta
could
get
say,
some fishermen
you'd
involved.
say no, and you'd say, Department, Conservation
Well,
Department, or.
maybe the folks in the
public
bait
health.
shop would actually support us in this.
Where's the bait shop?
'Cause
It's over on 1A by the, don't ask me why I know it's by the liquor, it's over by Eagle Brook
Is this
Saloon.
Carol's? Is it? we should
No,
talk
it's
about?
over by Eagle Brook and the liquor store
I
and
know,
across
but
from
there was a-
Norfolk Equipment.
Didn't they used to like rent
Right by the,
canoes down there?
right by the gas station.
Yeah.
Across the street from gas, there's a boat in the front.
I know what you're talking about.
So-
Once upon a time, it was called Carol's Bait Shop.
I don't know. I can't
It's
remember.
been around a long time, so I don't know if it still is or not.
Oh.
But anyway,
But-
we gotta talk to them down there,
This-
I think.
It'd
Makes
be
more
great
sense.
putting this
I like
here.
the scouts, I like the fishermen, I like the Conservation Commission, I'll get involved in this.
Yeah, and then how these signs should be made up specifically, that's pretty good. And this generic one, you can use this on the other areas we don't
We'll
know.
talk about that for the website.
Website, and you
We're
can,
gonna post that.
and you can, on the website, and also you can put this on a sign. Make it waterproof and hang it up.
Well, it could also be on our bulletin board. Is it already on our bulletin board?
Yeah, but you want it outside in the field, though. You were talking
It
about
used
all
to
People
over.
that come in and out.
No, but I certainly
Look at
got it
public
right
health.
there.
Yeah.
All right, so how about in the minutes? We say, we're going to reach out to, this is not just a Board of Health issue.
We're gonna do
We
this.
need some helpers on this, or collaborators on this. We need the Concom, we need the fishermen. I'd like to get the scouts involved, if there's somebody interested in doing a public service project, who could maybe even do the installation of these signs. Maybe even make them up. We give them the materials.
Well, who's gonna do this, I guess? Who's gonna, so are we suggesting Betsy's gonna get in touch with these people?
Or we could divide up the work among us. And I'll go down to 1A and see if I can find a fishing guy or
I
girl.
know where the bait shop is, you want me to go, I'll
You want
go.
to do the bait shop?
I'll do the bait shop.
Okay, we got the bait shop covered. I'll do the Concom. I'll do that. We gotta find somebody who's connected to scouts.
Well, I have somebody that I know, I don't know if
The
she's still.
Conservation Commission gets approached by the scouts all the time for community.
That's right. You know, they built signs and things
Yeah.
in the past, nice ones, like for town forest and things like that.
Harold Kelly.
All right, I'll take care of the scouts.
Okay, all right.
I don't know how, but I'll figure it out through Betsy or through Conservation
Maybe somebody's
my
listening on
own-
TV and they'll contact you.
or, for next,
All right,
yes.
all right, let's
So
make that on
that's-
our to-do list for next time, all right?
All right.
Okay,
'Cause Rich McCarthy did a lot of work, we have.
right, well, we got a lot of what Rich done, move a little farther forward on this.
Okay.
All right, so that was one item. Discuss, EPA involvement. Rich is not coming tonight, is he, Betsy?
No.
Um,
So this is what he said. Shall I,
Go ahead.
in his letter. Board of Health is in receipt of a letter dated November 1st, 2019, from Mark E. Baldy, Deputy Regional Director of the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, Bureau of Waste Site Cleanup to the U.S. EPA Region 1, requesting assistance with 17 Lawrence Street, Buckley, Man site. The DEP did hear back from EPA, and they were going to talk about the site on November 8th. I received a phone call from Gary Lipson of the EPA. They were reaching out to the Mann family in order to get permission to conduct a site walk of the property. I received a phone call today, which was November 25th. The EPA is in the process of getting permission to conduct a site visit. Once they have permission, he will get back in touch with me with a date for the site visit. So that was on November 25th, and today is December 3rd. So we're still waiting to hear. There'll be a site visit by the EPA. That's all we know. So I was going to ask Rich to go with him, if he does go on this site visit. I've
Yeah.
never been on the property. I don't know if anybody else,
Yeah,
you've been
Walked
on the
my-
property.
Walked my dog there a couple of times.
Okay. But you went on an efficient
Yeah.
walk, right?
well, a couple
So-
of times.
That's what we know.
Okay. So speaking of Buckley and Mann, is there anything else going on that we don't know about?
That's all I didn't even know about that, so that's.
Well, that's fairly new. I think once the Buckley and Mann family basically, thought they didn't have the resources to do anything significant, and we contacted DEP about it, they contacted EPA. Now, where that takes us, I'm still not clear, unless the EPA has resources that can be tapped to do additional, for example, testing of the site. So we're right now waiting to find out what's going to happen next with EPA. And that's all we really have right now.
Can you ask EPA to notice that there's no trespassing, nothing signs up? Because in the Buckley Man's, response, they say it's well posted, there's a gate and there's no access to it. There is easy access to the point that nobody even knows that it's not town-owned property. Every time I'm down there, I tell people, they're like, they should post something. And I was like, they say it's not posted, no trespassing. It's not posted, private property. It's right next to a brand-new bridge. People walk their dogs. They have dirt piles from the bridge still there. It looks like town-owned property. So if you have EPA, if you're walking with them, maybe just point out, there's not one sign that says no trespassing private property. There's actually a ramp for cars to, four-wheelers to go up and over into the land. And that was created by DePlacido when he was doing his work and never undone. So now there's a ramp for four-wheel, trucks with big wheels, not your four-wheel Jeep Cherokee, but to go up, and they just drive right up and onto the land, and they just mud all the time. And these people have no idea what they might be bringing onto the roads, There's not one warning. And a person got stuck on the ramp because they only had a Jeep. I told them it was private property. I actually took a picture of them. They were a police officer. And the police officer begged me not to report it. And I didn't. But they're a police officer in this town. And I didn't report it, but they had no idea it wasn't private property. I don't know if I believe that or not. But they got their Jeep stuck on it.
Betsy, do you have a copy of the letter that was sent from
They
DEP
say it was
to the
posted in this
EPA?
gate.
Yeah.
And there's no gate. There's a tree branch.
But who legally can post that property as it's private property? Who can legally
But they
post
stated
it?
in their, because it's contaminated land, they stated in their response back that it's fenced off in signs. there's not a fence and there's not a sign.
So
So.
that's the case, whose attention do we bring that so that we can compel them to do it?
I was remembering this letter. It says in here, the site is unsecured and accessible to the public. That's your description of it.
Yes,
Yeah, well, that the EPA now knows, because it was right in the DEP letter,
okay,
so.
good. Yeah, I didn't see that letter, that's good, because in their filing, they said it was secure and signed. So that's good that they at least know that.
Well, yeah,
It's,
folks in DEP have been there, and they know what it is.
it's an open DEP case, so I think they could make them at least put a sign. And maybe get rid of the ramp. To get up and in.
So the next thing that really has to happen is to get more money to finish testing. And then they can determine, whoever the EPA can determine, if it presents an imminent hazard. And then they can get some signage. But because the phase 2 scope of work was incomplete and didn't get to that point of determining whether or not there was an imminent hazard,
Yeah.
so I don't think you can force a private property owner, in answer to your question, to put up a sign. I don't think the DEP can force them unless they have the data that suggests it is an imminent hazard, or proves that it is an imminent hazard.
Right, I mean, the way this letter is written, it's like, if there is a danger here, the site is unsecured. We haven't actually confirmed that there is an imminent.
They do give all the data points, though, that they did collect.
Yeah.
I think in the letter, there was only, I think, 5 PCB levels, and they were all stated, the maximum stated in that letter.
Yeah.
Just for that.
So there's no requirement in town that says that we can request that somebody post their property because it's dangerous, whether it's contaminants or a giant hole that some kid can fall into, or it's a construction site under I mean, there's nothing, there's no rules and regulations about the town asking people to post their property in town.
Well, there's public health, dangers to public health.
Okay,
Um,
I'm good with
Are
that.
we there yet? I don't know.
I mean, but just in terms of, I don't know, concrete blocks or gravel pits or the messing with the pits that they've dug to test things,
Mhm.
right? I mean, all that type of stuff.
So can I suggest going forward, though, you may want to get money for the 2020 budget to retain Weston and Sampson again, to help guide the Board of Health on whatever the EPA finds. I don't know if you have any money going into the budget for next year, but you should probably get some funds to at least claim down gradient property status. The town owns down gradient property right abutting the Mill River, just before City Mills Pond. So do you have any money left for Weston and Sampson, or an LSP of?
Well, you're asking the wrong person. Rich was the one in charge of dispersing the money that we had.
So you may want to, from your board, you may want to request, whenever you do your 2020 budget, for the spring town meeting, to put in a significant amount so that you have some backup and a way to get a consultant, involved, an LSP.
Betsy, could you pass that along to Rich? That, might there be, well, you're actually asking for signage
No,
based on
I'm
what we now
asking for
know.
even, not just for signage, just
Wanna
for the
finish
whole
the
process
testing.
going forward. The
Well,
EPA is going to investigate, hopefully, if we
Right.
can get that on their list. But then you're going to be left with, well, what do we do now? So I think you want to have some LSP consultant again, like you did before. you never did file the downgrading of property status that I know of.
Well, that just raised the price tag significantly. We're starting to talk about an LSP, and,
That's why you have to budget for it in advance.
well, right.
This is different than the signage.
Oh, yeah.
This is what information you'll get after the EPA is involved.
But you want the town to do the testing then?
No, I want you to have somebody that you can ask, an LSP, what do we do now, you know, with the data from the EPA? Let's assume we get data from the EPA in the next year and a half. It's not gonna be next year probably, they already set their budgets, but, you know, you have to start planning ahead. I would like to see the town prepare for whatever data that comes out of this site. They already have financial inability to pay until February 2021. So we're not going to get any testing unless it comes from the EPA.
And you don't think the EPA will clean up if they find?
Oh, I have no idea. That would be a whole another question.
So then who's going to clean up once they get results of the testing? I don't know.
Well, that's a question.
Yeah.
But you still have to test, and that's the next thing, is to finish the testing.
Well, I tell you what, right now, we have an EPA contact, and there's been communication, which certainly seems like there's gonna be some additional communication. I think we need to find out what that communication looks like and what EPA says about essentially buying into this problem in lieu of the fact that the people who own the site don't have any resources. They have pockets way deeper than Norfolk's when it comes to that. So I think we need to find out what EPA is going to be doing first before we start, you know, putting entries into our town meeting budget. We have a little time yet, I think. When do budgets go in? Let's see. When? When do they go in?
They'll start working on them soon.
Yeah. I mean, back in the day, we used to actually have a Board of Health budget. Now we're all part of a big family of land use operators. Well, let's find out what EPA is going to do first, and then we'll go from there. Does this seem like a reasonable thing? Do you want to do something else?
I think that's reasonable for now.
So, is there anything else you want to talk about?
What else is on the agenda?
There's nothing on the agenda. Well, actually, we're on to PCB wells, has water testing at the town wells.
So we did get a response back. Our town wells have not been tested for PCBs. I don't have that email in front of me either. I don't know if you have it.
I don't.
But it came in a couple of weeks ago from, but anyway, it should be on the record, the town wells have not been tested for PCBs. So there'll be annual testing done every year. We asked them to test for dioxane, which they did, when in the new well and also in the Gold Street well. The new well on Holbrook Street and the Gold Street wells, because of the landfill dioxone levels at the landfill. But PCBs weren't tested for. And I don't think we could ask for it again, but we could ask for them to do just specifically PCB testing. But I don't know if the Mill River is in goes into the aquifer for the Gold Street well. And PCBs are attached to sediment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's-
So they, I don't understand the chemistry that well, but
Well.
would be
they're-
found in the well water.
I know the chemistry pretty well, but in terms of environmental fate, because of their chemistry, they really do stick to organic sediment.
Mhm.
And they're not terribly mobile once they do that, unless the sediment itself gets picked up and moved. They're not really gonna go in the water and migrate it like through an aquifer and into somebody's well field. So I imagine the reason why they aren't on anybody's test list is because they have such very limited, you know, mobility within the hydrosphere.
Mhm.
So, is there a pressing need to do it? I'm not convinced, based on my understanding of PCB geochemistry.
And is this the down gradient testing that you were alluding to, Sandy, right?
I was referring to the town-owned land, which is right ahead of City Mills Pond. That, yeah.
So that, because PCBs were found on the property, so now they have to expand the perimeter of testing, right? Which is,
That's what the Phase 2 scope of work would have completed.
right.
Yeah.
So should we wait until we get some more testing? It's
Well,
just-
right now it's unconfirmed, you know, whether there's anything downstream or not that's
Right.
an issue. So we need data to prove that
Everything
it
flows
is.
downstream.
So, there's no data from the town wells, so let's not even keep that on the list of things to think about. We don't have any data. And EPA is certainly aware of the fact that there are PCB levels that's actually in the
Right,
letter.
that's why
So
they're-
they know about them. All right, let's see what they have to say. And in the meantime, we have a couple other things on the agenda. One for you guys, MRC updates, Fran?
Well, I can see that you wanted to say
One
something.
other thing you might want to test the town water for, though, is the PFAS, because
The
PFAS, they're
PFAS.
fluorinated
The
organic
fluorinated,
chemicals.
yeah.
So if you haven't tested town wells for that yet, you should probably get those in there. There are two very popular ones, and then at least
Yeah.
6 that you should probably look, and the DEP is probably going to have it regulated in the coming months. Might get ahead of that.
So those, do we know that those weren't tested for already?
Well, do you have a report from the
I don't
town
have it in front of me.
that says they tested PFAS? You could, why don't you ask the water department?
Yeah, okay. Okay, we can look into that. But what, and you're suggesting that because there were high levels, I don't have those reports.
No, because eventually the DEP is looking into setting state standards, and I think it's gonna be, if you look it up on the Mass DEP website about PFAS, you'll see there's like a 4-page document about their recommendations. I can send you a link.
Okay, thank you.
These are particularly nasty in that they just last forever well, like PCBs. They just have extremely long lifetimes. And they're a growing concern because they are so indelible,
Where do
they're
they
there
come
for a
from?
long, long time.
And what are their sources?
They're in a lot of stuff, but at tiny, tiny concentrations. The worry is that these tiny concentrations might still have an impact on public health. But right now, it's a worry, I think. It's on people's radar. And
Okay,
I don't know whether the water department has even done any testing or not.
okay, we can find out.
We could certainly ask.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. Okay. MRC updates, so We
Is that
have-
it then, folks? Okay.
Thank you. So we have a sheltering workshop in Walpole that MEMA is presenting on a week from today, if anyone's interested. So our MRC was invited. And the other thing that's important is that there'll be an emergency dispensing site tabletop exercise on January 29th that all of us have been invited to. And there's a link here to respond, to register. And so this is to ensure that our critical staffing needs are accounted for, and they, which include police and fire, and that they understand what their responsibilities would be if we had to open up an emergency dispensing site, and how we would vaccinate the critical staff, which is the first responders, first of all. And so that's what this tabletop exercise is all about. And we would be providing our emergency dispensing site plan ahead of time to the folks in town who are invited, which is the Board of Health, EMS, police, fire.
Emergency Management Director, Town Administrator,
Public health nurse.
Public Health Nurse, she's going.
And it's, this workshop is in Sudbury. Is that right? Yes, Sudbury Town Hall. And the towns that are invited are Carlisle, Hopkinton, Millis, Norfolk, Sharon, Stowe, Sudbury, and Wayland. So there'll be a large group of people. This will go for 4 hours on Wednesday. Just as a heads up. Okay.
Is that it?
And anything else? I'm sorry, what did you
Is there any more MRC news?
We're trying to schedule a CPR training in February, and in January, we'll have a meeting, a general meeting, and we hoped to talk about, with the topic of, I don't want to say mental health, how to deal with stress in an emergency situation. We're hoping to have that as the topic, so that's the January meeting. That's it for
Oh.
now.
Speaking of emergencies, I saw your picture, I think, in the paper, was it?
Eileen's picture.
Were you both in that picture?
Oh, yes,
Were you both identified?
yes.
Oh, okay. I saw your name, Fran. Sorry.
It was Fran's from the
Back.
back, but I was
By
from the
this
front.
side.
That was the Stop the Bleed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's my question for both of you. Does the school nurse or all the folks who are involved in medical delivery systems within the schools have that kind of training?
Well, that was the point of Sean Dooley's presentation, was
Was
that.
for the schools?
Yes, it was for the schools, and we did
Yeah.
get some school participants. One of them, the one at our table, he was he was a gym teacher.
At H all day.
Right.
Okay.
So because there are these Stop the Bleed kits that have been dispersed to most of the public buildings, the DPW and the library and town hall, the feeling was that we needed to train people to know how to use those kits that was it the MRC or the Board of Health
MRC.
gave to all these places. So we were hoping more people would come to that, but we can also set up, because we've taken the class so many times that we would likely be able to,
Instructors?
yes, teach the class. So that's something that we would like to do as well.
Would that be an important service?
Yes.
To the schools especially?
Well, the schools
I think
have
they did it
done
already.
it. They've completed it. This man from H all day, he couldn't make it when they offered it.
So it had already happened other places?
Yeah, there was a large contingency from Plainville, I think. And we were hoping that we would get more municipal employees from Norfolk, because we had, Betsy had reached out to everyone in town hall, right? Through an email, but we didn't get too many people, so we're probably gonna have to do that as, through the MRC rule. Eileen has offered to help out with the
Lunchtime
training.
talk for people. I mean, they broke it down to the point where it's like half an hour long or something
Right,
now.
it doesn't have to be that,
Right.
you're right, you can do it in a half an hour. And you're right, it would probably lunch, because people don't wanna come out after work,
Right.
right? So,
And some
we
lunchtime
have to
talk
go
with
to
Make it during the
them.
pizza.
workday.
Yeah,
You get a better
to go
shot.
to them, yeah, so we'll work on that through the MRC, thank you for bringing that
The
up.
pizzas and stop the bleed.
Yeah.
So we're on a third Tuesday schedule, which makes it January 21st.
Sorry.
I know,
Oh,
so, we already had set that. Could we do it the 28th? Or is that gonna mess up things?
No, that's fine.
The Board of Health meeting on the 28th.
all right.
No one's traveling, you're not?
Not bad.
Wait a minute, what do we do? Sorry, I was reading text
We're-
messages from my husband. What are we doing? What's dates?
With the 28th of January?
January 28th. We can do that.
Okay.
Would that work?
Yep.
So, do we want to try and schedule the rest of the year so that people can go on vacation if you want to?
You want to go on vacation? Oh, wow.
Really? You go on vacation?
That seems like an
Well, I
extreme
think we
request,
typically said the third Tuesday of the month,
except when it's not.
so,
Okay.
except when we have to. So do you wanna keep it?
So.
So can I remove the meeting on December 17th, because we're not having that one, is that correct? I still have that in my calendar.
We're not having that.
Okay.
We're done this year.
All right.
So.
Well, do you want to go to, is the third there because we knew it was mostly clear on people's schedules? Well, now we're moving it to the fourth for the first time in the year. Is the fourth Tuesday okay?
Yes.
Fourth Tuesday forever is
Well, like
okay.
forever until we change it next week.
No, we won't change. So the fourth Tuesday in February is February 25th. Okay? So if we do this, can we do this?
All right,
Board of Health?
so 2/25.
That's not, is that vacation week? When is vacation week?
Ooh.
No,
I have no idea.
vacation week is the week.
Before?
Before, because it's President Day on the 17th.
Correct.
Okay, so February's all set. Then March,
Oops, wait a second.
oh no.
It's 2 goals in less 4 minutes. All right, yay, team.
We hit it for 2 months in a row there.
1,
Let's see.
2, 3, 4. So the 4th Tuesday in March would be the 24th.
Shoot, let me get on my little
Oh,
calendar.
that's funny, I had already put down
No,
MRC.
just wait a sec.
Uh-oh.
I can change that.
Nope, wait a minute, nope, that's.
I'll make sure I change that.
No, we're gonna be
Oh,
away.
man.
Well, can we either move it back or forward?
Which
again?
one are we moving?
March.
March, sure,
I'm gonna
what
be
would you
going
like to
on the
do?
20 what day was it?
24th.
24th. No, I'm going to.
So, want to move it to St. Patrick's Day, the 17th? Or do you like to party on St. Patrick's Day?
I'm fine with that, St. Patrick's Day. 'cause
Betsy.
it's- Yeah.
All right, so we're going to move it back a month, oh, yeah, back on March to the 17th, okay, Betsy?
Check my planning board.
Oh, that's right, too.
Oh.
It can sometimes be trouble, the planning board.
Oops.
Fran, I picked a day for the volunteer fair,
Oh, good.
which was, it's gonna have to be the 15th of March, as opposed to anything later, because the library was already in use
Okay.
for anything later.
When did you say in March?
17th.
17th. And so.
There are 5 Tuesdays in March. We could go to the 31st.
Or the 31st.
Well,
Let's do the 31st.
do the 31st, okay. Edit,
All right.
31st. 31. Okay.
Why don't you go as far as April for right now, in a kind of a fit of optimism here, and then, there is an election in there anyway, so then who knows what's going to be happening after that.
So the 4th Tuesday in
28th.
April is the 28th. Oops.
April 28th. Okay. I know it's late. I just have one other thing.
One. You allowed one other thing.
The unanticipated new
So,
business.
Well,
Oh, that's
just, as far as flavored tobacco products go, we all know that there's a new law in Massachusetts, yes, that went into effect on 11/27/19, and that meant that there's a permanent ban on retail sales of all flavored tobacco, including menthol cigarettes and vape products. But the ban for menthol cigarettes doesn't go into effect until June 1st of 2020. Ban on menthol cigarettes. Our ban goes into effect in January. But we let people know that months ago. So it's good to know that I think this has happened in the state. And,
Yeah.
and the other thing that is interesting is there's a 75% increase from the excise tax, that these products currently are, you have to pay for excise tax, so it's going up 75% on vaping products. They didn't have the same tax that cigarettes had, but now they're being taxed the same way. Electronic products are being taxed the same way. They'll be able to be sold in flavored products in adult-only stores, but, and the price will go up for them. So, along those lines, I've been thinking about compliance, and other towns actually have revolving funds for their tobacco permits, that funds that come in from their tobacco permits, they put into a revolving account. And those funds are used for compliance checks. So I did talk to one town that does this, which is Ashland, and their permits are $253 for a tobacco a smoking permit, tobacco permit, I don't know what we call them, tobacco permits, right?
Tobacco sales permit.
So I'm just curious how long have our permits been $100? Have they always been $100 or?
For a long time.
Do you ever remember increasing the price? So a couple of things. First of all, I don't know how much it costs to do a compliance check, first of all. And we have 7 vendors, retailers, right now that have permits. So that's $700 a year, right now. If we were going to do compliance checks twice a year, how much would that be? I don't know. So I'm looking into all of this. I'm bringing it up to the board, wondering, maybe if I have more information, if we would want to go to town meeting. I think we would have to go to town meeting like the senior center did to get a revolving account. Is there anyone else in the town that has a revolving account for any kind of permit?
There are quite a few.
Yeah?
For permits?
Well, for a revolving account.
We do.
We do? What do you mean?
That's how we pay Wade.
Oh.
Yeah.
So the money that people pay for the inspections goes into this account, and that's how we pay.
Application fees.
And the same with food permits. So is this
Where does that money
unreasonable?
go?
I guess, before I...
General fund.
Yeah. What we're trying to do is skim a little bit here.
No, I'm just trying to, I went on to the FDA website, which does compliance checks. I mean, Betsy actually printed this out for us last time, but I had forgotten about the data. So this tells you, as of 11/26/2019, it says it was updated, that the retailers in Norfolk were inspected. Well, the last time any retailers in Norfolk were inspected was 11/15/2018, if this is accurate, and they said it's been updated in 2019. So we haven't had any compliance checks in Norfolk. Now, it's true that when they did compliance checks, they said no violations, but they only did compliance checks in 2018 of 5 of the 7 establishments anyway. So a couple of them were never tested, actually. I've got 2 again. Annie's Market was not tested. They never visited them for compliance
They
checks.
may not have been open at that time. When did
In
they-
2018, they might not have been open. Right. The Gulf Station on Denham Street, according to this report, was not, did not have a visit in 2018. And Provo Market did not have a visit, Provo Liquors, in 2018. So I'm not sure that we can rely on the FDA to do the compliance checks for us. And that's why I'm thinking if we had a revolving fund, we could have our own compliance checks. So,
I think that's a great idea. I mean, I think it's part of the purview of the Board of Health, for sure. Right? Shouldn't we be doing our own compliance checks in our own town?
But we do need to
Well-
find out how much it's gonna cost.
Yeah, I mean, right now, we have those things being handled through a sanitarian who is basically, getting paid a flat rate.
But a compliance check is different than what our food, you have to have a young adult go in. And,
Well, right, which is how, in fact, years and years ago, when we first did the tobacco regs.
Tobacco control program.
yeah, there
Right.
was money.
Yes.
There was money from the state at the time. There is no money from the state anymore for compliance checks, although I am kind of looking into that because I'm thinking with this new law, I've contacted a couple of folks, with the new law, maybe they'll have money for compliance checks again. I don't know. But right now, there is no money from the state for compliance checks, so it's on a town-by-town basis.
So I think Fran is suggesting that we increase the price of our tobacco certificates and use
We
that
might have to.
pay our compliance checks once we
That's-
find out how much it costs to do
Right.
that.
So,
Because
to
it would
be
be
continued? I mean,
14
I'll
of them,
just
right?
bring you
So
the-
twice a
yeah.
year, you do it twice a year, 7 establishments?
Yeah.
Yeah. 14 visits.
So it might be more like, I don't know.
You said you
$100
mentioned
more.
Ashland there. Do they actually have an estimate of what it costs to do
I-
their checks?
He did not respond. I have to follow up with him.
Okay.
And I have a couple of other people I can follow up with, too.
All right, so if we can get some data on what it would cost, then we can think about, all right, what does that mean in terms of our fees from, is it 7
Yes.
places that we collect? Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a good idea.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Oh, my God. it's almost 10 o'clock.
Okay.
Sort of feel like the old days, when Betsy's mom was in her position. We used to go to midnight some nights.
Wow.
Those were,
Well, I know that the
Crazy
planning board's
times.
been going a little late recently.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I've been watching them.
Yeah, not happy about that one either.
So apparently the Bruins won, in case anybody wanted to know.
Well, that's good. So they're still number 1.
Apparently, yes.
Well, is there a motion to adjourn unless there's some other new business we want to talk
I
about?
make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I second the
All in
motion.
favor?
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned.
Yay.